All right, good evening, everyone. The regular meeting of the Independent School District 279 School Board is called to order at 6:01 p.m. on December 14th, 2021. This regular business meeting of the Osseo School Board is being conducted in person. The meeting can be monitored electronically by streaming online from the district website. An archived recording of tonight's meeting will also be available on the district website. Seated in front of you, from my left to your right, are Director Tamara Grady.
Good evening.
Director Thomas Brooks, Director Jackie Mosqueda Jones, myself, Kelsey Dawson Walton, good evening, Director Tanya Simons, Director Heather Douglas, Superintendent Corey McIntyre, General Counsel Tim Palmutier are also present in the boardroom along with our student school board representatives, Cal Thorson, Maple Grove Senior High, Faith Sua, Osseo Senior, Hanaya Dabney, Park Center Senior High, and we Nadia Abdullah will not be with us from the OALC. Those of you who can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Director Brooks, will you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, board members, are there any additions to the agenda? Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Brooks to accept the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. At this time, we will be recognizing our retiree, Superintendent McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair Dawson Walton, and good evening, board members. This evening is the first of two retiree recognitions that are done each school year, one in December and one in June. This year, 47 individuals across all classifications and employee groups throughout the district have retired or will be retiring at the end of this month during the period of July through December. These 47 individuals have served a cumulative total of 921 years of service to the students and families of ISD's 279. Some of our retirees are here tonight, and I'll acknowledge those that were able to join us tonight, while many of the retirees being recognized are viewing our live meeting, and others are able to watch the archive copy of the video on the district website. So I just want to take a moment to all of our retirees to thank them for their contributions that you've all made as retirees to many generations of students, and that is significant. When you decided to work in education and in a school district, you chose a job of the heart. And we're so grateful that it was in our district, here in ISD 279. I'll read the names along with the most recent position and building of our retirees. And again, some of them have been able to join us in person, so I'll ask them to stand when I say their name. So to start us off tonight, I'll recognize those with year 1 through 10 years of service. Mark Waddlin, Instructional and Clerical ESP in the Adult Basic Education Program, 4 years. Kathy Stadler, Bus ESP here at the ESC, 5 years. Mary Jo Ryan, Bus ESP at the ESC, 6 years. Randall Crosby, Custodian at Elm Creek Elementary, 7 years. April Carlson, School Nutrition Manager at Parkbrook Elementary, 7 years. Peggy Crostad, Bus ESP at the ESC, 9 years. Karen Fulton, Bus ESP at the ESC, 9 years. Elizabeth Fayen, School Nutrition Assistant, Edenbrook Elementary, 10 years. Next, I'll recognize those with 11 to 20 years of service. Earl Von Endy, Custodian, Maple Grove Middle School, 11 years. I believe Jay Durbin is next. Is Jay in the audience tonight? There's Jay right there in front of me. Jay Durbin, Coordinator, Technology Support Services, ESC. Jay, thank you for your 12 years of service. Julie Blue, STEAM Curriculum Coordinator at Zanewood Elementary, 12 years. Deborah Cole, School Nutrition Assistant, Park Center Senior High, 13 years. Deborah Olson, Clerical ESP at Osseo Senior High, 15 years. Elaine Taylor, Instructional ESP, Crestview Elementary, 15 years. Amy Weaver, Special Education ESP at Osseo Senior High, 16 years. Joanne Anderson, Lead Cashier at Osseo Middle School, 16 years. Linda Hawkinson, Special Education ESP, Maple Grove Middle School, 17 years. Bonnie Wright, Special Education and Kid Stop ESP at Weaver Lake Elementary, 18 years. Karen Schupfer, Library, Media, and Clerical ESP at Fair Oaks Elementary, 18 years. Charles Kaufman, Custodian at Brooklyn Middle School, 19 years. Catherine Rossiter, Clerical ESP at ESC, 19 years. Amy Robinson, Special Education, Clerical ESP at Basswood Elementary, 19 years. Cindy Stoa, Library Media Specialist, Cedar Island Elementary, 19 years. Dolores McClellan, Special Education ESP at Northview Middle School, 20 years. And Margaret Johnson, Special Education ESP at Basswood Elementary, 20 years. Next, I'll recognize those with 21 to 30 years of service. This is a long list for up to 30 years. Pamela Thorin, AESP at Weaver Lake Elementary, 21 years. Jane Hines, Instructional Clerical ESP at Weaver Lake Elementary, 21 years. Connie Wormauger, Title I Clerical ESP at Fair Oaks Elementary, 21 years. Kathleen Fearson, Assistant Kitchen Manager at Basswood Elementary, 21 years. Patricia Moore, are you in the room tonight? There's Patricia. If you could stand. Patricia Moore, Infotech ESP here at the ESC and Brooklyn Middle, 21 years. Thank you. I believe we also have Eric Evenson. There's Eric. Eric Evenson is a tech support specialist at the ESC, 22 years. Thank you. Connie Franklin, English Learners ESP at Oakview Elementary, 24 years. Marla Berry, Clerical and Instructional ESP at Rice Lake Elementary, 24 years. Cheryl Durbin is here with us, Special Education ESP at Elm Creek Elementary, 24 years. Congratulations. I am smiling back here. John Wahlberg, Building Engineer at the OALC, 24 years. Holly Garten, AESB Community Facilities at the ESC, 25 years. Joni Kuckendorfer, Special Education ESP, Birch Grove Elementary, 25 years. Laura Davis, Resource Manager, Rush Creek Elementary, 27 years. Shirley Berg, Clerical ESP at Maple Grove Senior High, 29 years. And Robert Anderson, Custodian at the OALC, 30 years. Next, I'll recognize those with more than 30 years of service. Starting with Donna Jones, Resource Manager, Administrative Assistant at Weaver Lake Elementary, 30 years. Scott Pearson, Custodian at Maple Grove Senior, 30 years. Patricia Wahlberg, Nutrition Manager, Northview Middle School, 32 years. Michael Simons, Building Operations Supervisor, Park Center Senior High, 32 years. Frederick Bauermeister, Custodian, Maple Grove Senior, 34 years. Annette Wallen, Teacher in 4th grade at Edenbrook Elementary, 36 years. And lastly, who's here in person, Margot Clavin, Principal, Rice Lake Elementary, 32 years. So again, congratulations to all of our retirees, and thank you for all the years of service to the Osseo area schools. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be, a few times a year to be able to recognize and wish a happy retirement to so many of our staff. And on behalf of the entire board, just thank you for enriching the lives of our scholars and really walking out our mission through these years. And so congratulations and best wishes to each of you. Thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is Student School Board Representatives Reports. I'll call on each representative to give their report. Nadia, you can go first. No, sorry, she's not here. My bad. Okay. Hanaya.
Park Center has recently opened up flex spaces, so they're areas where students can work, and they have different levels throughout the whole school. So some flex spaces are for group working and some flex spaces are for solo working. And also, the CRC had us do surveys with our interests about careers. And if there's career panels, they will send you an email to let you know so you can go to the career panels of your interests. And also, our Park Center boys basketball team has been doing very good. They're 3-0 right now. I think they're in 3rd place in their league. So, yeah.
Thank you. All right, Faith.
Hi. I'm Faith and I go to Osseo Senior High School. So a little update on my school are the winter sports is off to a great start. The boys basketball teams defeated Edina to start the season. The girls basketball team defeated Irondale in their home opener. The wrestling team had 3 champions at the Osseo and Chanhassen invite. Nordic skiing has snow, so they're happy. Boys and girls hockey are off to a great start and they're looking forward to their tournament. The boys swimming doubled their participants under a new head coach, Natalia Strauss. Cheer finished 2nd in their invite at Champlain this weekend. Gymnastics tied with Blaine in their duel last week. Dan competes in the Northwest Suburban Conference Championship on Saturday at Elk River. And recently, we also opened back up our flex room, which is used for PSEO students, kids, flex students as well. And if you just want that quiet time to do your assignments and stuff like that, not in a classroom space, you can go there. This week is Blast into Winter Break Week, and it's just basically a time for us to do, it's like a week where we just pick a day and we just do different things. So today was Crayon Day, and I was looking like a Pepto-Bismol. I was pink. And then for the rest of the week, we're just going to have different days for different things. It's basically like a spirit week, but a blast into winter break.
Thank you. And Cal.
Hi, I'm Cal Thorson. I'm from Maple Grove Senior High. I'd like to start off just by highlighting a few of the sports that have started. So we have boys and girls basketball and hockey have started. So usually I go through this report and I highlight sports and activities. There's not a lot going on right now with sports and activities, so I'm going to switch it up this time and kind of highlight one of our programs at Maple Grove, which is the CRC, or their Career Resource Center. I know some other schools have it. Osseo and Park Center also have Career Resource Center. The purpose of the CRC is to prepare students for college and career after high school. A lot of what they do is setting up AP testing, ACT testing, all testing for students. Another thing that they do is helping all grade levels stay on track for graduating from high school, just making sure everyone has a plan for their post-high school career. Our CRC actually has a website, so you can access that through the Maple Grove Senior High page. And there's scholarship opportunities for students seeking financial aid, including opportunities on learning how to fill out forms like the FAFSA to get ready for college. CRC, the leader of the CRC, or the organizer, is Mike Vicellio. He does a great job creating plans for our foundations classes so we can learn how to prepare for our post-high school career. So I just really wanted to highlight that this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the student representatives have reviewed the agenda tonight, the meeting packet, in advance, and are prepared to answer questions from board members on issues to seek student input related to agenda items for this evening meeting. Any board members, do you have any agenda items for which you'd like some student input on? No?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
Well, were any of you on the committee for the review of the book that's on our agenda tonight? So that was a different set of kids?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay. So do you have any input on that?
So I actually I think I read it on my own time. Is it the Trevor Noah book?
Yeah.
About like workshops and stuff. So I read the book, and I've also been in like advanced classes like HP and AP classes where like we read certain stuff or like watch certain movies, and they do have some like trigger words. Like recently in government's class, we was watching the Justice Leader Marshall, like Thurgood Marshall, and was watching one of his cases where he had to go down south, and they tried to make it based off that time, and we heard like the N-word, the K-word, and stuff like that, but it was all for educational purposes, and also the Trevor Noah book was all for educational purposes. It wasn't like we left class and was like talking about it and stuff like that. I feel like if it's read to like the mature students who can take it, it's a good thing for educational purposes. It really gets you to relate and understand that time period instead of us like sugarcoating it and trying to make it like, oh, it wasn't like this, it was like this. It's like my teacher just gave it to us, and she did tell us beforehand like, oh, it does have these words in it, and if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to read it, you don't have to watch it, and you can leave the classroom or you can be excused. And nobody left the class, everybody was able to handle it, and we moved on, and we're old enough to understand and like be able to take it instead of like not like sugarcoating it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question. So we are reviewing our strategic plan this evening, and I'd love to hear any of your input on it, especially thinking about the values that really represent what we are seeking to aspire and hold ourselves accountable to from a leadership level, just so we all have the same expectations all the way from leaders to students. And I just wanted to kind of hear what your input might be on that strategic plan.
I can go ahead and answer this one. So one of the core values on the roadmap here is transparency, and I think the school board has done a really good job improving that this year, even with just like the student board representative program. Being able to like represent our schools here has been a really great opportunity, and I think it gives us an opportunity to show people that don't usually see what's going on at the schools give them more of an idea of what's going on inside the classroom with teachers and student relationships. But one thing that I think we can improve more on is a sense of belonging and inclusion. I feel like a lot of students feel like they don't belong, and they would like more inclusion inside their schools, and knowing that they're accepted inside their classrooms, and just knowing that their teachers understand their struggles.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
That was my question as well, so thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, those are great questions. Thank you so much. Thank you, and have a good evening, you guys. All right. We will move on. John Morstad, Executive Director of Finance and Operations, will now provide a presentation for the Truth in Taxation hearing and public comment and questions.
Thank you, Chair Dawson Walton, Superintendent McIntyre, board members, and members in the audience this evening. On the agenda this evening is the approval of the preliminary levy limitation for taxes payable in 2022. State statute requires that the school board certify the preliminary levy limitation by September 30th each year, which the board did at our board meeting on September 28th. The purpose of that approval was to provide information to the Hennepin County Auditor so that the proposed tax statements can be prepared and mailed to all taxpayers by November 25th. Before approval of the final levy certification that will take place this evening, a hearing needs to take place between November 25th and December 28th with very specific rules and content requirements. This hearing, also known as Truth in Taxation, is required. In order to accomplish these state requirements, this hearing agenda will include background information on the district's 2022 budget, along with actual financial results for our fiscal year 2021. This will be followed by information on the district's proposed tax levy for taxes payable in calendar 2022. At the end of the presentation, the public will have the opportunity to provide comments and ask questions. First, we'll provide some background on information about public school funding. The Minnesota State Constitution includes the duty of the legislature to establish a system of public schools. The local property tax levy is one of the mechanisms that the state legislature uses to fund public education. As a result, public school funding is very regulated, and revenue formulas, tax policy, and the tax levy process are established through state law. Some other pertinent information about school funding: over the past 18 years, state aid through general education revenue formula, which is the main source of revenue school districts receive, has not kept pace with the rate of inflation. With inflation considered, the per pupil allowance would need to be increased by an additional 8.7% over this time period. To put this in a visual perspective, the chart here shows the dotted orange line as the current increase to the funding formula, and the blue line is adjusted for inflation using the Consumer Price Index. The difference for this next year is $598 per pupil. So for Osseo, that represents $13.2 million in annual revenue that we are not receiving. Since, as you're looking here, ultimately we have a growing dependence on referendum revenue. So since 1993, the increase on local revenues statewide between school districts that started as 65% of districts averaging 332 pupils, that is now all districts in the state averaging 1,570 pupils, or a 473% increase in local levy authority since 1993. Underfunding of special education is also a huge component of this. Special education information from the state is only available through fiscal year 2020, but basically the cost of providing special education programs were underfunded statewide by $673 million. MDE estimates by 2025 the cost of providing special education statewide will be underfunded by $806 million. Again, to give perspective locally to that, Osseo schools are underfunded by $25.4 million as of FY 2020. So we have another full year, and that information will come in at the end of December. So it's understanding that underfunding of special education costs requires us to transfer regular program resources to support those programs. And ultimately, that has a trickle effect into the general fund. And so we have to ask for more local revenue to be able to support that. A key point about tax levy is that increases and decreases in the local levy do not necessarily translate to changes in the school district's budget. State-determined formulas and voter approval creates limits for the tax levy. Some increases are offset by reductions in state aid, and expenditure budgets are limited by and established through separate processes. Thus, an increase in school taxes does not always correlate to an increase in the school district's expenditure budget. So now we'll take a look at our fiscal year 22, which is the school year 21-22 budget. While taxpayers will see that on their tax statements the levied amounts for cities and school districts' budget cycles are not the same. As this chart illustrates, the city and county budgets, their budget runs in the same year as they levy taxes, whereas a school district that approves tax levies in December are utilizing those funds in the following fiscal year. So the levy conversation tonight includes revenue that will be used in the 22-23 school year that starts on July 1st. The school district's budget, we budget within several different funds as listed on this slide. The budget for the majority of the K-12 operations lies within the general and transportation fund. Other funds that apply to the levy are the community service fund and the general debt service fund. There are some notes here of a couple items that are highlighted where it says 4 separate internal service funds. Those include our dental self-insurance, medical self-insurance, retirement incentive pay, and post-employment benefit revocable trust. And the 2 custodial funds are our local collaborative time study, or LCTS, and the Northwest Family Service Center. This chart shows the fiscal year 2021 actual year-end results and the fiscal year 22 adopted budget amounts. This chart was published in the newspaper and is posted on the district's website. It is required publication, is just included here for information, but it is a quick look at what the budget is. We'll get into a little more detail. This pie chart shows Osseo Area Schools' projected revenue for all funds. Total budgeted revenue for fiscal 22 is about $374.5 million. Next, I will provide detail on the blue portion of this chart, the General Operating Transportation Fund, which makes up just under 80% of the total budget. This chart shows the revenue sources for the General Operating Transportation Fund. As shown previously, looking at about 80% of the revenue received by the school district. This fund's revenue comes from four main sources, with state aid, which is made up of both general state aid in the orange section and special education state aid in the green section. And those make up 66.4% of our revenue. Property taxes, which are the dark blue section, make up 18.1%. Federal revenues, the light blue section, and the purple other section, which includes some grants, make up the remaining 15.5%. Now looking at projected general fund expenditures by program, most expenditures directly support students through regular special education, vocational instruction, instructional support, and transportation services. You'll notice the expenditure budget is slightly higher than the revenue budget. The district is spending down approximately $15 million in available fund balances this year. This chart breaks down the expenditure budget in a different way through object category. So essentially, we're going to break it down into the 5 major categories of spending. What you'll see here are salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, materials, capital, and then some other. What you're going to see is that 83% of the budget pays for people, salaries and benefits. Education is a people-intensive industry, and this is a very normal pattern for schools. Now we will move on from the budget to discuss the proposed tax levies for taxes payable in 2022. Some background: every owner of taxable property pays property taxes for various taxing jurisdictions: cities, counties, townships, school districts, special districts in which their property is located. Each taxing jurisdiction sets its own tax levy, often based on limits in state law. The county, Hennepin County in our case, sends out the bills, collects the taxes from property owners, and distributes the funds back to the taxing jurisdictions, including our school district. This is a sample of what a property tax statement may look like. It will show each taxing jurisdiction and the corresponding tax information, including the time and date of the hearing that you're at here today. I'm just highlighting where the school portion is on this particular bill. Each school district may levy taxes in over 40 different categories. Levy limits, or the maximum amount the school district can levy for each category, are set by either state law or by voter approval. The Minnesota Department of Education calculates detailed levy limits for each public school district. We reviewed these limits with the school board when the preliminary levy was set on September 28th. Now we will look specifically at school district property taxes. And there's essentially a 7-step process to how those are calculated. First step, the city or county assessor is going to determine the market value for each parcel of property. Second, the legislator sets formulas for tax capacity. These formulas determine how much tax burden will fall on each different kind of property. County auditor calculates tax capacity for each parcel of property in the county, as well as the total tax capacity for each school district. The legislature, step 4, sets formulas which determine school district levy limits. And then the Minnesota Department of Education calculates detailed levy limits for each district based on those formulas approved by the legislature. Step 6, the school board adopts a proposed levy in September based on the limits set in step 5 by the Department of Ed. Truth in taxation hearing takes place today, and board adopts final levy, which cannot exceed the proposed levy unless the voters approve an additional amount. Step 7, the county auditor will determine taxes for each parcel based on the approved levies from each jurisdiction and send out your tax bill. This is a schedule of events that establish the payable 2022 tax levy. Tonight we're holding the public hearing, and the board is scheduled to take action later this evening. State law requires that we explain reasons for major increases in the overall levy. The total proposed tax levy for taxes payable in 2022 is increasing by 1.6%, or $1,581,265 over last year. This slide shows line items of the levy within the three funds for which the tax levy has a revenue component. So those funds include the general fund, the community service fund, and the debt service fund. So for instance, you don't see food service fund on this slide because there is not a tax levy component that funds their revenue. The first column shows the numbers of the tax levy for each line item last year. The yellow highlighted column shows the proposed tax levy increases for payable 2022. And the third column indicates the increase or decrease in that item, and finally the total percentage. The next several slides will explain some of the line items of the levy that have increased. Specific areas we'll look at are voter-approved operating referendum, long-term facilities maintenance in both the general fund with offsetting impact in the debt service fund, prior year adjustments, and then we'll also be looking at reduction for debt excess. In the general fund, the levy is proposed to increase by $470,889. This increase is attributed mainly to the increase in the overall tax base of the school district, which the voter-approved capital projects levy, or what is often referred to as the technology levy, is determined as a percent of that tax base. Thus, that tax base increases, the levy amount increases. This next category, these are changes to both the general fund portion of long-term facilities maintenance, also known as LTFM, as well as the debt service portion of LTFM. The school district strives to coordinate the capital and debt levies with other levies to maintain a level of a smooth and flat tax rate as much as possible. For taxes payable in 22, while there's an increase in LTFM funding in the general fund as well as the debt service fund, you will also see a significant decline in voter-approved debt service for our other post-employment benefits because those debt items have been retired. Next section is general fund other, which is our prior year adjustments. These areas, the district, when we do the initial levy, we have to put in an estimate. And they are then calculated for the current levy, and then we'll update that retroactively to adjust back to the actual amount. So our changes for this year are a decrease of $1,164,666. This includes adjustments for enrollment and expenditures. Therefore, if enrollment or certain expenditures come in lower than expected from previous years, you'll see a negative adjustment in the current levy. The largest area to point out here is previously with COVID, we had increased the levy expecting a large increase to our unemployment levy. And ultimately, the state picked up the cost of that and didn't pass that on to districts, so we were able to return that back to taxpayers. Finally, the debt excess, the debt service fund reduction for debt excess. So state statute requires that we levy 105% of our debt service payments, your principal and interest payments. So we have a little more to cover any delinquencies in tax collections. That's the reason they do it. In general, delinquencies are less than 5%, so over time the district will build up a fund balance. There are formulas in state statute that determine how much can be used to reduce future debt payments, and that's what this reduction for debt excess is. So in this case, we're reducing by $1,055,407 in the current levy. While changes in the dollar amount of the levy provided through funding formulas can cause the tax bill for individual properties to increase or decrease, other factors are also involved, including changes in the value of an individual property and changes in the value of all property in the district. The following slides are tables and graphs showing examples of changes in the school district portion of property taxes from taxes payable 2019 through taxes payable 2022. The examples were prepared by the district's financial advisor, Ehlers & Associates. All examples are based on a 14.6% increase in property value over the 4-year period, including a 4% increase from 21 to 22. Examples are for the property in the city of Osseo. Amounts for '22 are preliminary estimates based on best data available, and final amounts could change slightly. Estimates prepared by Ellers. So as you're looking at this slide, you're going to see that the tax impact. And what I want to highlight here with the blue bar is if you started with your home in 2019 and it's grown by those rates, it started at about $218,000, it's now at about $250,000, the tax impact on you for 2022 will decrease by $3. And what's important to keep in mind is that each property has unique characteristics, and actual changes in property may be more or less for any individual parcel. These amounts are intended to provide a representation of what may have happened to school district property taxes over this period for typical properties. As I mentioned, and here's a good chart to see kind of the trend, the $250,000 residential property will experience a $3 decrease in school taxes from $1,054 for taxes payable in 2021 to $1,051 for taxes payable in 2022. Using the same assumptions, on a $400,000 residential property, we'll experience a tax decrease of $5 this year. Looking at a $1 million commercial industrial property, they will experience a tax decrease of $47 per year. And finally, a $1 million apartment property will experience a tax decrease of $6 a year. This chart shows a quick breakdown of property types within our district by each major category. So as you can see, residential makes up 79.4% of the property breakdown within our school district. Commercial picks up the remaining 20.6%, and although you see some other dollar amounts in the agriculture and seasonal recreational, they're not enough to hit 0.1%. Our overall market value for property in our district is $19.6 billion. There are some programs that are available for property owners to give some tax relief. The first is called the Homestead Credit Refund. This is a refund program based on income and total property taxes. More information on this can be found at revenue.state.mn.us. There's also a Minnesota Special Property Tax Refund available to all property owners. What triggers this is property owners with a gross tax increase of at least 12% and $100 over the prior year are eligible for a refund of up to 60% of the amount of which tax increased, up to $1,000 total. And there's a form on here, that form M1PR, again at the Department of Revenue's website. There's also a senior citizen property tax deferral. This allows property taxpayers who are 65 years or older and whose total household income is $60,000 or less to defer a portion of their homestead property taxes until some later time. It allows senior citizens whose property taxes are high relative to their incomes, but who wish to stay in their homes, an option for paying their property taxes. This option limits the amount of taxes payable to 3% of the household income up to $60,000. An important piece to this plan is that the taxes are deferred, and the taxes plus interest must be paid when the home is sold or the homeowner dies. Applications for this program are available in the county auditor's office or may be obtained from the Department of Revenue's website we referenced earlier. So next steps, in just a moment, we'll be given opportunity for public comment regarding the proposed levy. Then later at the board meeting this evening, the board will certify the property taxes payable in 2022. And here's a final look at those numbers for each category. In summary, the proposed levy payable for 2022 is $102,134,057.19. And with that, I will turn it back over to Chair Dawson Walton.
Thank you. All right. Are you going to call for public comment?
Would you like to?
Okay. Sure. Would anybody wanting to comment about the levy, you guys can please go to the microphone. Okay, I'll ask one more time. If anybody wants to, wishes to comment about the levy, please step forward to the microphone. All right. If not, we will move on to our next agenda item. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is the audience opportunity to address the school board. I'll review a few of the guidelines for those that will speak to the board. All right, during audience opportunity to address the school board, I'll call on each speaker who submitted a speaker card. We do ask that speakers keep their comments to 3 minutes. The board does not take action or discuss matters during this portion of the meeting. Speakers may be referred to the superintendent or staff if follow-up is necessary. The complete guidelines for public participation are provided on the meeting materials table and on the school board section of the district website. When I call your name, please come to the microphone and state your name, your topic, and also whether or not you are a district resident. All right, Matt Leeson.
And they addressed each of those challenges, and after some deliberation, that committee voted 10-0 to retain that book in our curriculum. I also want to acknowledge the family that brought forth the challenge. I cannot imagine that it's easy to do. In a way, you're taking on the system. You're taking on a book that is beloved by so many students and who have had such a good experience with it. I also want to thank them personally for reminding me of the importance of the ongoing discussion that I and my colleagues have. And part of my job is secondary English content lead for Osseo area schools. And so thank you for that reminder, the ongoing discussion that we have about what books we read and how they are used in the classroom and why we choose the books that we do. That is an ongoing and a very important discussion that we have. I'm a teacher that has used texts in the past that have controversial material in them. I've sent parent letters home. I'm very aware of potential concerns. The question is often asked, would you have your daughter read this book? I have a daughter who's in 8th grade down the street here at Osseo Junior High. And would I have her read it next year? I want to also mention my daughter is going to be a 5th generation graduate of Osseo Senior High. Would I have her read the book next year? I would give this book to my daughter tomorrow, knowing that she would be happens every time I mention her. So, once again, thank you to the committee for your careful consideration. While I acknowledge those concerns, I do want to point out that we do not ban, burn, or villainize books that are so beloved and have been so valuable to students. Thank you to the board for in advance for supporting the committee's unanimous decision.
All right, thank you. Next up is Celeste Runquist.
Good evening. Sorry, I'm a little bit shorter. I have a question for the school board and for the District 279 community here tonight. Do you really want to force 9th graders to encounter obscene, sexual, pornographic material in a required course? Is that what you hope to accomplish in this district? It seems like you want to treat students respectfully. Your core values in Policy 104 say that you do. But I asked, is it respectful to force these words on unsuspecting 9th graders, words of looking at porn sites of women and having sex with them in one's mind? Is that the kind of respect you have in mind? It seems like you believe trust is essential to achieving results. 104 says this trust is another core value. But I ask, is it worthy of our trust to force this vivid sexual reading without any chance to give parental consent? Is that the trust you are hoping to model? It seems like you want to engage families as partners in this mission. 104 says that's your strategy, and I agree that makes good sense. And yet not a single family was informed that you would be subjecting our children to this material. Other parents have brought forth similar concerns in previous years, but there has been no action by the district nor by the staff at Osseo Senior. Is it okay that our teachers and administrators just bypass this strategy and bypass the most basic engagement and basic respect for the diversity of families in this district? I'm sure the answer is a strong no to all of these. So we are here tonight to make clear that these values and strategies are not being honored by all of the 9th grade English teachers at Osseo High School. In a little while, later on, you're going to consider an appeal to one specific book for one specific problem. But that's just one of an ongoing pattern of multiple books with multiple problems. In every case, the same lack of transparency to families, the same lack of consent regarding one's personal sexual development and learning. You already have a procedure for health classes where you do respect the diversity of families very well. Parents are notified of the sexual content, have the chance to review materials, have the chance to enroll in the course that best aligns with their family. Is it unacceptable to simply apply that same approach when this kind of material is going to appear in other courses? Is that unreasonable? We are not asking to banish books. We are not here to dictate the curriculum. We are calling on you to act immediately to stop forcing unwanted sexual talk and off-the-charts language on our children, on our families, without consent, without awareness, and without respect. You are our last appeal to earn back our trust. I thank you for listening to my comments here this evening. And if it's okay, I don't know who can do this, but I do have some handouts that I would like to give to you guys for your reference at some point. This is a list of mature quotes from several 9th grade English books that are currently in English classes at Osseo High School. So this is just for your information only. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you can just pass it on. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. The next speaker is Amanda Sandvik.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Sandvik. I have 2 children in this district. I found it very interesting that your school representative said one of the things you can improve upon is transparency, because that's exactly what I'm here to talk to you tonight about. Is it your job as a school district to expose children to sexually explicit material without prior parent consent? About a year ago, our then freshman at Osseo Senior told us he felt the book he was reading in English was completely inappropriate for school. This was not Born a Crime. This was a book called The Poet X. And this was due to mostly the sexual content in the book. There are several mature themes in this book with sexual-related topics woven throughout. Some of the more explicit sexual material includes a chapter called Fingers, where the girl masturbates, and another where she's having a sexual encounter with a boy on the couch. I spoke to the teachers to understand the purpose of this book. We had the conversations with our child so he could understand what it was about from our family's perspective, and we had him finish the book. So why am I raising this a year later? We have an upcoming freshman in the school next year, and we do not want to be put in this position again next year where we're unaware of what our child is reading until they're partway through a book. I've talked to Principal Vernig about this recently and shared our concerns, and I believe she's taking them seriously. That being said, I feel it's important to make others in the district aware of this because the Poet X situation does not appear to be an isolated incident. I know my children are exposed to things out of the classroom, but what they're exposed to out of the classroom is on me as a parent. I have control over that. This is a school district purposefully exposing our children to sexual material, a lot of derogatory comments in this book, some of which I had to look up, and all without me knowing. You have control over that. not us. Each family has a different threshold on what's appropriate for their children. What is appropriate for my children is different from many of yours, and that's okay. What I'm asking for is the right to know as parents what our children are going to be exposed to ahead of time, and so we and our students can decide what's best for them. What does it do to expose a child to something they shouldn't be exposed to? Is that really the position you want to put our children in? Page 5 of your reevaluation committee meeting summary from the November 3rd meeting says the following. Parents can make decisions for their children, but can one parent make a decision for every student? And there lies the problem. You say parents can make decisions for their children, but based on our experience, it's only when parents question the book. I'm not asking for books to be removed. I'm asking for transparency. I'm asking for the common decency of teachers informing us beforehand, me and my students, that they're going to be exposed to mature content so that we can make the decision what's right for them. And I want to be provided options, not in the middle of the book when my child's already read a chapter about masturbation, but beforehand, so we can all decide what's best for our children. More transparency is spot on and exactly what this school needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Olson.
Good evening, staff. My name is Nancy, and I am the mother of 2 children who will be transitioning to Osseo High School within the next 2 years. I have many friends who have children currently already attending the high school. As I prepare for 9th grade registration, the testimonial I heard at the school board meeting on October 19th caused me great alarm to hear the content of the material that is currently being taught within the English department. It appears that many of the books in the English curriculum have very adult content, including sexual content and dialogue. Yes, I am aware my children are exposed to many things. I'm not naive to that. But as a parent, I'm not comfortable with a teacher exposing my children to the sexually explicit and adult content. Are teachers having open discussions, answering questions that may arise from the sexual content in the books? Why does the district feel it is appropriate to implement this material within the English curriculum? In middle school, I'm very accustomed to the teachers providing transparency to all the parents in regards to materials that are being taught in the class, as well as notifications to the movies that are being played. As a parent, the middle school always provides me the right to opt my child out of the content and material. Minnesota state statute allows parents and guardians to remove their children from instruction if they object to the material without penalty or threat of a child receiving a failed grade. In this district, as parents, we have known that to be the opt-out policy. According to state law, the school must provide such opportunities to students and families within the district. Does Osseo High School abide by the state statute for the option to opt the student out while they're still able to obtain credit for their high school graduation standards? For us to exercise these rights as parents, we need to know ahead of time what is in the curriculum as well as the options that are available. I feel this is not an unreasonable suggestion to families, especially in light of the school's most recent curriculum choices. As a parent, it would be beneficial in the English curriculum if we were provided well ahead of time, along with clear curriculum guidelines, school's objectives, and stated goals for the student learning based of the content. All relevant information for parents, especially since it's a district's stated policy to collaborate with us as parents. In order to act in accordance with its own district policy at Osseo High School, something needs to change. I'm concerned about the school's ability to maintain accountability to its curriculum choices. Therefore, I ask you, as the school district, to start implementing the district policy, as well as giving the parents the right to exercise the opt-out policy. Please restore my faith in your curriculum, your transparency that you provide to parents and families so that our kids can be the third-generation scholars at Osseo High School.
Thank you. All right, Sally Kimmis. Sorry if I pronounced your name.
Good evening. My name is Sally Kimmis, and I am the Library Media Specialist at Edinburgh Elementary and a 20-year resident of Brooklyn Park. And tonight, I would like to take a little step back and share with you the amazing impact that our 279 libraries have on our schools and with our students, specifically in regards to these diverse collections that we have really been working on curating over at least the last 10 years. So imagine sitting in front of 28 first graders. Imagine the look of joy on the students' faces as I read words in their language, Arabic, Spanish, Cherokee. Imagine their excitement when they see a book about Ramadan and exclaim, "I celebrate Ramadan." Or when they see a child on the cover of a book and they call out to a friend, "Hey, that kid looks just like you." Now picture a group of third graders learning about heroes from Native American history and hearing the refrain from the book, "You are people who matter." Yes, it's true. Now go show the world what people who matter can do. Students see what these people are able to accomplish, and they can dream a little more about what they will do to impact their world. Over the last 8 years at Edinburgh, I have cultivated a culture in my building where students ask me for topics that are of interest to them. And this year, I had a 5th grade student straight up ask me, "Do you have any books on racism?" They were looking for both fiction and nonfiction books that were addressing this topic. They wanted books that could inspire them and help them learn more about how people experiencing racism were pushing back and demanding more from their community. Other times, students ask if there are more books just like the one they just finished reading, and I'll always ask them, more questions to find out what specifically they liked. And one book in particular last year had a very diverse group of 4th grade friends, all looking for more books with Asian main characters, interacting in powerful ways with their world. This group asked me for the 3rd book in this series months before it was published, and well before even I knew that the book was even being written. So I think these connections to culture and lived experience are what choice reading in the library is all about. These are the books that we as librarians are excited to share with our students, and the conversations that are generated by books on a wide variety of topics help students and staff look at and process together the things that are happening in our world. It is why librarians and teachers come to school excited to engage with students each and every day. And all of this is the amazing impact that the diverse collections that we have in our District 279 libraries have on our students at Osseo area schools.
Thank you. Carol and Michelle Fisher.
Hello, good evening. Director Dawson Walton, School Board, Superintendent McGuire, and the Cabinet, wherever you are. My name is Carol Fisher. I am a homeowner and a teacher in our district, proudly teaching 4th grade at Weaver Lake Elementary. I have been in this district well over 25 years and have seen many changes in education, class size, programming, adding benchmark standards, assessment, changing technology, extracurricular activities, changing family dynamics, and our ever-changing multiculturally rich community. When a teacher, such as I, finishes college, we're excited. We feel as though we have conquered a mountain. Once we start our career, we realize that we are merely at the saddle. As we look ahead, we see more peaks and more valleys. My mountain, I call Elementary School Mountain. It has weathered and rounded out over the last 30 years of education for me. I have learned my craft and I do it well. But when I look over to Special Education Mountain, it is a very different picture.
Hello, my name is Michelle Fisher. I'm also a District 279 resident, former parent of 2 graduates, and a current special education teacher in a Setting 3 classroom at Osseo Senior High. Carol is an amazing storyteller. And as a negotiator, she has interviewed numerous special education teachers in addition to myself, desperately seeking answers needed to solve our teacher shortage, ESP shortage, and workload problem. When she asked me to speak with her tonight, I'll be honest, my first reaction was no, and I had a minor meltdown in my kitchen. I am too tired, and speaking never changes anything anyway. But it makes no sense to have a 4th grade general education teacher up here speaking to SPED workload issues. I'm not a storyteller like Carol. I'm a straight shooter, and the message is short and simple. Before the pandemic, there were SPED staffing shortages and workload concerns. The pandemic has multiplied this, and we are at a point of crisis. Students' needs are increasing, and staffing shortages are increasing at the same time. These aren't necessarily correlated, but there are times when staffing shortages lead to major safety concerns with our most vulnerable students. Every day, my alarm goes off at 5:30. I push snooze at least once because I'm not prepared to get up and do it all over again. I run from the time I arrive at school until the time I get home. Most days, my prep gets stolen with meetings, a student crisis, staff coverage, collaboration with colleagues, and many, many other things. I am one of those teachers who provides this district with free work during my nights and my weekends. This is hurting me. This hurts my family. In the end, this hurts my students because I am at empty. I can't give anymore. This has to stop. There's no time during the duty day for due process. Our preps, when we do get them, are also filled with evaluating students for SPED services, lesson planning, curriculum design, triaging students' needs, including social, emotional, and health concerns right now due to COVID. We can't just be teachers anymore. We are constantly aware of social distancing, mask wearing, who's coughing, who's falling asleep at their desks. And boy, that's not normal. I wonder if they have COVID this week. In addition to our regular due process requirements, now we have added COVID-19 recovery service meetings, paperwork, and services to be provided by us, the human resource that is already tapped out. In addition, many of us have made updates to our already completed due process paperwork for COVID-19 recovery services. But because the district student services team had updated Synergy, which is our software program, some of us who have already completed our paperwork because of the new and improved COVID-19 services grid had to redo it. Come on, when our paperwork is done, we shouldn't have to redo it. Because the district wasn't ready. We were ready. The answer to these shortages and workload is simple. We need the district to really see us, hear us, and value us. This may require you to look through a different lens. Be bold. Let ISD 279 show the other districts how it's done. Spend the money you've saved. Hire additional staff. Buy the curriculum. Listen to the suggestions provided by the negotiating team. These suggestions are not random. Staff are telling you what they need in order to be okay and to stay in this district. Your staff are not machines. We are humans with limitations, and we are at our breaking point. Make headlines. Give other teachers and paraprofessionals from other districts a reason to flock to Osseo. Our students are depending on you, and we are depending on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily Bollinger.
Good evening. My name is Emily Bollinger, and I'm an English teacher at the OALC. I also served on the committee that thoughtfully voted 10-0 to keep Trevor Noah's Born a Crime in our curriculum. Today, I want to talk briefly about book challenges in general, as well as this one in particular. I'm not so naive as to think that challenges are new. However, it's quite clear that they are now more widespread. And I think it's important to note the literature being questioned. Nationwide and here in Osseo, traditionally canonical texts like Romeo and Juliet and the Odyssey have been largely free of controversy, despite being rife with what could be called explicit content. And instead, challenges are focused on authors from marginalized communities and books that contain topics like race, gender, and sexuality, things that impact every one of our scholars. This is, unfortunately, not at all surprising. But it is detrimental. As author Stephen Chbosky said, banning books gives us silence when we need speech, it closes our ears when we need to listen, it makes us blind when we need sight. Literature ignites conversations for scholars to have with each other, with teachers who can facilitate tough topics, and with guardians who can support or dismiss ideas in regard to familial values. I watched the board meeting where 2 scenes were read aloud, 2 separate scenes that total maybe 20 seconds of the 9-hour audiobook. Context matters, and ignoring it is egregious. In one of these scenes, Trevor noted a lesson his mom taught him to respect women. In the other, he briefly mentioned the speed of dial-up internet. The challenger also brought up a third passage, one in which Trevor talked about a friend named Hitler, and how he got that name because they were not taught critical thinking in school, only that some guy named Hitler was very powerful. Trevor also discussed how Hitler was not the epitome of evil to South Africans, as they had experienced horrific atrocities in the more immediate apartheid past. A side note that provided an important counter-narrative to my own Eurocentric knowledge of the world. Finally, the challenger noted the vulgar language in the text, which accounts for 0.12% of the book. In response, the scholars on the committee noted 2 things. First, the same words can be heard in our high schools, on the internet, and in media. Second, they stressed he did not use such language haphazardly or for shock value, but did so intentionally. This was the language in which he was immersed. I am a passionate educator, one who strives to engage her scholars in a responsive, standards-based curriculum that offers both windows into others' lived experiences and mirrors that reflect their own. I am also a voracious reader, especially of books that introduce me to new perspectives, make me empathize with others, challenge my thinking, and encourage me to engage in conversation with those around me. Thus, I will end with another quote from an author, Lois Lowry. Submitting to censorship is to enter the seductive world of The Giver, one of her books. The world where there are no bad words and no bad deeds. But it is also the world where choice has been taken away and reality distorted. And that is the most dangerous world of all. Thank you.
Thank you. David Helgendorf.
Need to set my timer. Hi, I'm David Hilgendorf. This is my 12th year serving as the Library Media Specialist at Park Center Senior High. And I am addressing item 11D, the Instructional Materials Selection Reevaluation Appeal. I am the father of 3 young adults, an avid reader of young adult literature, and I have written hundreds of reviews on Goodreads, a social network about literature. I've led many young adult book clubs. I have read and reviewed Trevor Noah's Born a Crime before this challenge was made, and I reread the book when I served on the Materials Reconsideration Committee. Born a Crime is a coming-of-age story focused on systemic racism. Student members of the Reconsideration Committee made really compelling arguments for the merit of this work based on their memorable and positive learning experiences when reading and discussing it. In the school setting, curriculum specialists, teachers, administrators, librarians, and families all have a role to play in making sure our students are exposed to developmentally appropriate learning materials in a safe manner. As guardians, teachers, and curriculum specialists, we make decisions about what is appropriate for our students, but what is considered appropriate varies from person to person, as was said earlier. And our district has hired specialists trained to determine what is appropriate. Our library media specialists and classroom teachers are trained to teach students how to determine whether the content they are exposed to is current, relevant, if the author is qualified, if the content is accurate, and what is the purpose or bias of literature. We teach students not to depend on a visceral reaction to the content. Ultimately, we hope that our students will learn to determine for themselves what is appropriate, and that they will be able to articulate when something makes them uncomfortable or feels inappropriate. In the case of reading a book for a class, when peers are discussing some controversial content, teachers can guide discussion of its merits and its faults. This, to me, is the best way for students to learn how to discern their feelings about content to which they may be later exposed. Our students are being exposed to content. I spend a lot of time in the library. I hear a lot of things. No matter how much we try to protect them from it, it's our responsibility to teach them how to react to it, how to discern their own comfort levels and to advocate for their own needs rather than to prohibit their exposure to content. We turn to our training and education experts to guide us in this process of making careful selections as we determine what is appropriate for our students. Born a Crime is developmentally appropriate for 9th grade students, particularly when it is read in a guided learning environment. It's an excellent resource for high school students who want to explore and better understand causes of racism. We followed a thorough reconsideration procedure with this, and to remove this book now would set a precedent that bypasses our district's policies and procedures. It's considered censorship when a book is removed from the curriculum for ideological reasons. We really have to carefully consider if we want Osseo area schools to be permanently labeled as a book banning organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Spanier? Spanier, sorry, thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Spanier. I live in the district. My kids have gone through the district, and I actually graduated K-12 going through the district. I teach at Maple Grove Middle School. I've taught there since 1993. We have an amazing staff at our school, but we don't have enough. We don't have enough administrators. We don't have enough ESPs. We don't have enough counselors, and we don't have enough students. Our workload is intense. I teach 8th grade social studies, and I teach almost 200 students a day. It is challenging to inspire and prepare all students with the workload that we have. I'm very disappointed to hear that the school was not more receptive to the negotiators' requests about our workload, and we weren't making any progress on that. And that was very disappointing to hear. I'm also looking at the inflation rate and seeing that it's over 6%. If teachers receive less than 6% on our contract, I consider that a pay cut. I hope that the school board and the district will give the teachers a contract that looks at our workload and the value that we bring to our students and give us a fair and decent contract. It's in the best interest of students to have a well-staffed school and teachers who are not overworked. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Deb Peterson.
Thank you, Chair Dawson Walton and other board members. My name is Deb Peterson. I'm a resident of Maple Grove, the parent of a recent Maple Grove High School grad, and the state membership lead and Northwest Metro group lead for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. 9 years ago this morning, Allison, Anna Grace, Anne Marie, Aviel, Ben, Carolyn, Catherine, Charlotte, Chase, Daniel, Dawn, Dylan, Emil, Grace, Jack, James, Jesse, Jessica, Joey, Lauren, Madeline, Mary, Noah, Olivia, Rachel, and Vicky headed to school like any other day. We know their names now because their lives were violently taken by a school shooter. Between 75% and 80% of school shooters use firearms that are accessed from unsecured storage in homes. The Sandy Hook shooter was no different. Yesterday, multiple schools in our area, including Maple Grove High School, received messages from people threatening to do the same to our kids. While the conversation surrounding guns in schools takes many different paths, one simple step we can take is promoting the safe storage of firearms at home. Moms Demand Action has a program called Be Smart for Kids, which has been implemented in schools across the country to reduce gun-related deaths in children. Be Smart stands for Secure All Guns in Your Home and Vehicles. Model responsible behavior around guns. Ask about the presence of unsecured guns in other homes. Recognize the risks of teen suicide. Tell your peers to be smart. Around 350 kids a year aged 17 and under gain access to a firearm and unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else, and I say unintentionally because there are no accidental shootings. Nearly 700 kids a year aged 17 or under die by suicide from a gun. 3.5 million American children live in homes with loaded unsecured guns, and gun sales increased 64% in 2020. On our website, besmartforkids.org, parents and educators can find information on how to safely secure firearms, how to talk to other parents about their gun safety practices, and many more facts and tips on how to keep our kids safe. For schools, we have trained presenters who will come in and talk to staff, table at school events, and provide homeschool materials for students, as well as many other ways to intervene. I brought information pamphlets and contact information for the board members, Superintendent McIntyre. I look forward to furthering the conversation about keeping our kids safe from gun violence. Too often, the news brings us stories of shootings of and by children, and pictures of texts from students under fire that rips the hearts out of any parent who reads them. We don't have to live like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Bierce.
Good evening, my name is Megan Bierce. I'm a parent and volunteer in the district. Susan L. Webb described book banning as an attempt to, quote, undermine one of the primary functions of education, teaching students how to think for themselves. The mission statement of our district includes these core values. Better decisions emerge when diverse perspectives are intentionally included in a collaborative process, and everyone benefits when cultural differences are acknowledged and understood, and individuals are treated respectfully and equitably. I'm asking tonight for the board to keep the book Born a Crime by Trevor Noah in our schools. This book has sold over 1 million copies and won multiple awards, including 2 from the NAACP. District 279 is a public school district. If a parent or guardian has an issue with a topic, there are avenues to address those, including review and alternate book assignments, which this book has been subjected to. This book is about a society that discriminated because of a person's skin color or place of birth. I'm 100% against censorship, books being banned, and infringing on First Amendment rights. In an open and democratic society, we do not restrict access to political ideas or social perspectives discussed in books. By reversing the unanimous decision that went through the established review process, you could expose the district to legal action. In Board of Education Island Tree Union Free School District versus PICO, the Supreme Court ruled public officials cannot censor publications by a generally accepted author. Trevor Noah's multiple awards and acclaim would likely put him in that category. Justin Brennan's opinion stated that though, quote, local school boards have broad discretion in the management of school affairs, that discretion must be exercised in a manner that comports with the imperatives of the First Amendment. Also in regards to the First Amendment, an article related to the endorsement clause states, quote, the 89 case of Allegheny County versus ACLU, A practice is examined to see if it unconstitutionally endorses religion by conveying a message that religion is favored, preferred, or promoted over other beliefs, end quote. If the decision to ban this book from the classroom is predicated on the belief that something is against one's religion, it would appear to meet this criteria. On a personal note, prior to 1967, it would have been illegal for my husband and I to be married, just like Trevor Noah's parents. Under apartheid, interracial marriage was illegal as it was here in the United States. His mere existence was considered a crime because of hate, and racial discrimination still happens here too. This book is about finding one's identity in a country that doesn't want you to exist. It's a story of his resilience and the love of his mother. This book explores education, immigration, discrimination, stereotypes, family bonds, racism, humor, and so much more. It meets the Common Core standards for high school, and its study guide discusses how to use this book to challenge our scholars to expand their knowledge, like our core values state. Finally, it is so important that our scholars see themselves reflected in curriculum. Many students and their parents in our district identify as biracial and multiracial. This is an important book that explores the nuances of that. Please keep this book in our classrooms.
Thank you. Okay, our final speaker is Christy Ekdahl.
Good evening, Chair Dawson Walton, members of the board, Dr. McIntyre, and members of the community present and online. My name is Christy Ekdahl. I am a fourth grade teacher at Oakview Elementary School, and I am here to express my gratitude for the gift of 3 additional days added to winter break. This school year has been about retraining and refining the socialization skills and school skills of behaviors, routines, and habits of students who were interrupted by a pandemic. It has been about the mental and physical and social and emotional well-being of our students. It has been about our own mental and physical, social, and well-being. The additional days give teachers time to catch up on laundry, prepare for the holidays, focus on self-care practices, make doctor's appointments, take the pets to the vet, take parents to the doctors, plan culturally responsive lessons, provide meaningful feedback to students, catch up on grading assessments. Just one math assessment takes 2 hours to correct. Get quality nights of sleep where our mind does not have to constantly think, did I correct that assessment? Will I have extra students because of the sub shortage? Is my administration going to be available for some behavior support? Or are they going to be teaching? Will they be supervising recess? Will they be in ESP today? Or how hard is this mask battle going to be today for the students against the teacher? Like how many times? Does my lesson have all the components of clear? Is my lesson, is it a priming lesson? Is it processing, or is it retaining for understanding? How is my lesson culturally responsive to the students in my classroom? Can they see themselves? What perspective is missing from my lesson? How do I adapt my lesson for the needs of the students in my classroom? Did I change it for the IEP that is in my room? Did I change it for the staff and the student in my room? Did I let the other teachers know that we were going sledding today, to include the students who maybe had other services at certain times? Our lists don't end. So we are thankful to have the time to clear our minds, focus on our mental health, on our self-care practices without working in survival conditions, and complete the work that we have to do when we don't have enough time in our day to do it, while we reset and re-energize for January. Families, we also thank you for the encouraging emails, notes, and other ways that you have shown your support this year. We acknowledge the inconvenience and additional stress the extra days off may have caused you and appreciate your flexibility. 3 days is a step in the right direction. What might just be next?
All right. Thank you, everyone, for addressing the school board. It means a lot to us, and we hear each and every one of you. Our next agenda item is superintendent's report, so take it away.
All right, thank you, Chair Dawson Walton, and again, thank you, board members. So in my report this evening, I'll be sharing points of pride, and you heard some already from our students earlier, and also a brief, very brief COVID preparedness plan update with assistance from members of our COVID response team or somewhere out there. Will be coming in shortly. We did provide you with some copies of some of that information at your seats tonight because it's up to date as of today. So first tonight I'll start with Points of Pride, and it's a regular part of our superintendent's report to share Points of Pride in our district. Points of Pride celebrate our students, staff, community members who are contributing to the accomplishment of our mission, which is to inspire and prepare all students with the confidence, courage, and competence to achieve their dreams, contribute to community, and engage in a lifetime of learning. So to start things off tonight, and you heard some earlier, but I would like to add some additional recognition. So in the area of achieving dreams, Maple Grove Senior High Zoe Atkins competed in the Class AA singles semifinals in tennis this fall. She recently accepted a scholarship to the University of Nebraska Omaha. Also in this photo here is congratulations to Park Center Senior High School athletes Braden Carrington and Leo Torbor for signing their letters of intent. Braden will be joining the basketball team at the University of Minnesota, and Leo will be joining the team at San Jose State. So some real big milestones for some of our scholars. Also, congratulations to Park Center Senior High's CI Adapted Soccer team, who took third place at the state tournament with a 14-5 victory in the championship game. Miracle Chroma had 8 goals. Gaetano Sanders added 3. Jake Detman and Alex Singh also had goals, and Emilio Hernandez also added a goal and assist in the big win to get third place in the state. So congratulations to our adapted soccer team. Also, on this side you can see it's a kind of a distant shot here. Maple Grove Senior High football made it to the Class 6A state championship game for the first time in team history against the #1 seed Lakeville South. It was a very close, hard-fought game. I was there down to the final minutes, and unfortunately Maple Grove did end up losing by a score of 13-7. But congratulations to the Crimson for a record-breaking season and ending as the state runner-up. Also, our Maple Grove swim team placed 10th in the overall in state and 8th in the 200-yard medley and 400-yard freestyle relays. Very proud of them. This next photo here shows Maple Grove Middle School competing as a team in the first LEGO League competition. So shown here is 7th grade student Marcus Pangambian competing with this team who won the championship, and they're going to be advancing to the state championship February 26th. So congratulations. In the area of contributing to community, Aisha Main is a senior at Osseo Senior High and was recognized as the standout student by CCX Media for her kindness. She's a member of the Orchestra and National Honor Society, and in the future she hopes to study molecular biology to research cancer. And speaking of spotlights, Basswood Elementary School is also featured by CCX Media. Basswood is building leadership through student patrol ambassadors in a program called Basswood Gives Back. In this program, more than 70 students work on community projects, including a toy drive that is happening right now. And in the area of lifelong learning, a 6th grade class at Brooklyn Middle STEAM School learned about 3D modeling through an interactive project with gingerbread. Students created blueprints using Tinkercad and replicated the models in this seasonal activity. The Osseo Area Learning Center continues to provide learning experiences for their students to learn at a pace that fits their goals. And 12th grader Tiana Walker took advantage of this in a way that helped her discover a new passion for painting. She says it makes me put more effort into my work, and it makes me actually want to go to school. So little things can make those connections about continue to keep those engaged efforts in the line that we always talk about. In the area of mission-driven employees, you can see here, 2 social studies teachers, Megan Thompson and Kristen Elmquist, were selected to represent Minnesota on the first cohort of the National Constitution Center's Teacher Advisory Council to promote literacy. The Teacher Advisory Council supports the teaching of civic topics in U.S. history and current events, and by 2023, the National Constitution Center plans to expand the council by 1,000 educators. So we're very happy to have 2 of our very own amongst the first. And Mr. Lehan's here with us tonight. This is his last board meeting as he takes on his new endeavor. And we did want to take a moment to recognize Assistant Superintendent, I'll see a little title here, Assistant Superintendent of Equity and Achievement, Michael Lehan, who was awarded the U of M Distinguished Alumni Award. This is the highest honor of the University of Minnesota's College of Education and Human Development Department. He received this award for his outstanding work in the community, especially his work with our students. Michael Rodriguez, the Dean of the department and the Director of the Educational Equity Resource Center, said, quote, "Michael received this Distinguished Alumni Award, our college's highest honor, in recognition of him being an inspirational builder of agency among his community of scholars to advance access and opportunity while cultivating social resilience and academic excellence." So, Mr. Lehan, I know goes without saying, congratulations. And we're also going to miss you at the same time, but I do have your phone number, so I will be in touch. Lastly, I want to share just a couple reminders tonight, being the time of year it is. Our students have a number of musical performances this week. You can find the full list on the news section of our website. Also, we're preparing already for the 22-23 school year, and the 22-23 registration deadline is to be in the first lottery for district magnet schools is December 31st, so it's coming up quickly. This includes Birch Grove, Weaver Lake, Sanewood Elementary Schools, Brooklyn Middle Steam School, and also Senior High's healthcare program, along with Park Center, Senior High's International Baccalaureate program. The deadline for the 22-23 school year in-district transfer applications is also coming up soon, and that's January 25th. So please reach out to our enrollment center for any questions. So next, it looks like our team is here. In my superintendent's report, I'm joined by Troy Schreifels, our Director of Facilities, Transportation, and Risk Management. And Colin O'Brien will also join us, our COVID response team coordinator, who will be assisting me in providing just a brief COVID-19 situation update as part of the preparedness plan. At the last board meeting, we shared this, as the situation continues to change, there are a number of considerations that we've been closely monitoring, and we'll kind of through the winter break and come back to the board in January with additional information. Things that include, and Troy will lead us with an update on these areas, but the impact of district, community, and county positive case rates now and in the coming weeks, including the impact of any holiday season that we've experienced as we're watching any results from Thanksgiving as we're moving into the winter holiday break. The impact of our staff shortages due to illness and absences. Also giving you a brief update on the vaccine rates for 5 to 11-year-olds along with our 12 to 18-year-olds. And then also on the impact of our continued implementation of the rapid antigen testing program, status of the new Minnesota OSHA requirements and if and when they're implemented, along with an update on the federal requirement for masks on public transit that you've probably seen in the media. So with that, Troy and Colin, I'll turn over to you to walk us through just a brief summary of the most pertinent data right now.
Thank you, Superintendent McIntyre. Good evening, Board Chair Dawson Walton, board members, and Superintendent McIntyre in our audience. I didn't know that COVID always gets the stage left where people want to leave, but hey, that works too. With that being said, I wanted to provide some updates to the considerations that we spoke about at the last board work session and give a little bit more input in regards to that. But before I do that, I just want to acknowledge the opportunity I have both Colin O'Brien, who is our COVID coordinator at the district level that manages a lot of the work we do every day, and Dave Mordock, our coordinator of risk management. And it would be without saying, we also have a really diverse team of individuals that are behind the scenes every day that are working through this, that have tirelessly supported this program so we can keep students in school and we can keep the education opportunities present in for kids. So it's been a long journey, but I wanted to acknowledge that before I jumped in. And with that, as we look at the different considerations that are here in front of you tonight, I'll start with the impact of holiday gatherings. We did see a brief spike after the MEA break. You'll see some of that with Colin in a little bit. And we're about at that same period of time now with Thanksgiving. So Colin will share a little bit more with you about that in a few minutes. And then obviously for considerations, the holiday break, which is coming up, or the winter break, which is a 2-week period. And there's a lot of discussion that's going on around that. So we're going to be cautiously watching that as we proceed forward. I did connect with Laurel Anderson, our Executive Director of HR, regarding staff shortages. And I think you've heard a little bit of that tonight from some of the public speakers as well. On average, we have this is from Laurel, on average we've had double the number of absences for all staff that we did last year at this time. And I'd also like to recognize and note at this time last year, we were also in distance learning as well. Teachers' unfilled absence range is from 30 to 40 staff Monday through Thursday and 50 to 60 on Fridays. From our nursing team, who I work closely with for the pandemic response, we are currently short 9 nurses and a few float nurses at all of our sites. So it's been very impactful and it's been challenging in our department. They're a critical component for our COVID response. We have tried to mitigate that through the use of a consulting group called IEA, and we've brought in 10 additional staff that we flex throughout our system, and they've been working now since November 4th. They are not nurses, but they're administrative support, so they help with a lot of the processes and procedures that we do have in place for our mitigation. So we're very thankful to have that opportunity and to use some of our grant funding to support that, because without that, I don't know what we would be doing, especially with our nursing teams, because they're a vital component to this. And so I extend my thanks again to our nursing team and all of our staff and support staff at the sites, because this is a difficult time regarding that. The other update that I wanted to provide is, before I transition it over, is the Minnesota OSHA requirement and implementation. If you're familiar with that or you're not, there's an emergency temporary standard that was pushed down from the federal government. That standard we were preparing for the last several weeks and months, because it was supposed to go into effect in December, phase 1 of it, and then phase 2 was supposed to go into effect right after winter break in January, I believe January 6th. That's currently being challenged at the federal level. There was multiple states that were in litigation regarding that. All of the challenges have been consolidated to one circuit court, the 6th Circuit Court, and it's currently there at this time. The federal government and OSHA have determined at this time that they're pausing everything while we wait for those results and the determination. And there's some speculation that depending on how it goes through the courts, that it could be escalated to the Supreme Court. Our team is preparing for that either way, because there's a lot of work for employers to prepare for regarding vaccination status and testing if an individual is not vaccinated. So there's certain specific requirements that our team is preparing for on that. We'll continue that preparation. Lastly, before I turn it over to Colin, January 19th was the scheduled date for the expiration of the federal requirement for masks on public transit, and that impacts us directly with our school bus transportation. That mandate has been extended, and that is extended through March the 18th by the TSA. So we know for a fact, no matter where we're at with our mitigation strategies, that requirement will continue on all school buses. And if anybody's looking at going on vacation over the holiday break, planes, trains, and other mass transits will continue across the United States. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colin, and he's going to share a couple of slides and details around the rates and what's been occurring within our system, and then I'll come back to give you a couple more updates.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, School Board Superintendent McIntyre. I'm going to give you a few updates, very briefly, high level, on our COVID rates, all within Hennepin County and specifically in our district by request. So right now you can see on the screen there's a trend line. This is the total positive cases per 100,000 in Hennepin County since they started tracking in early August. The one note that we really like to monitor for this is when school began in September, we can see the uptick in total case counts in Hennepin County. And then about anywhere between 10 and 20 days after a holiday or some other family get-togethers, we tend to see another jump in total cases, followed by a downturn in total cases. So you're going to see this roller coaster pattern. It's not going to go away. So we'll move on to the next slide, Kate. So we were asked to put together a total number of cases per 100,000 evened out. So the blue line you're seeing on the screen are all positive cases in District 279 as reported to the COVID team, averaged out to 100,000. The other two lines are Hennepin County in red and Anoka County in yellow. Both of those lines were pulled from the University of Minnesota's Division of Biostatistics, who pulled their information from the state. So you can see clearly that we as a district saw a very large spike in November. We do believe that some of this is MEA related, some of this is indoor fall sports related. We do believe some of this is also just additional community spread that continued on top of the other things that students, staff, community members continue to do, making their own choices while they're not with us. So again, this is averaged out to 100,000. This is not skewed in any way, so we did do the math on this. So this is a graph that will show you cases per 100,000 as shown by the University of Minnesota Division of Biostatistics by district. So we do want to note that the districts as called out in here, they pull the information by positive case counts by zip code within a school district's boundaries. So this is not specifically school-age children. This is anybody that resides within that zip code. This is that information on positive cases per 100,000. We did note on the names whether there is a universal, blended, or recommended mask in place for that school district. So you can see that we, as Osseo area schools, land somewhere in between of all of the school districts that we've been pulling data for since the start of the school district, or the start of the school year. This is a graph of all of our positive students and staff, broken out by students and staff and secondary and elementary schools since the start of the school year. This is direct in correlation to what you've seen on the previous two slides as our direct numbers. This is just the breakdown between elementary, secondary, and students and staff, just as a comparison note. So this is a weekly snapshot, and I want to be very clear. It's a snapshot that was pulled at 2:55 this afternoon of a combination of our students and staff who are currently on quarantine, who are either positive or exhibiting COVID symptoms as they appear on the home health screening PDF chart that we've asked families and staff members to follow. So if they have any of those symptoms while at the building, they are either offered a test if parental consent was given, or they're sent home. Or if they call the buildings and say that, I've got COVID-like symptoms, and here they are, they get a symptomatic form from us, and that would populate this chart. So this is all students and staff in our district by percentage of population in each building. That was a request, I believe, last month as well. So here's that case count. You'll note the one outlier here, ABE. Based on their total staff numbers in their building, one symptomatic or positive case in that building gets them to 5%. So I just want to call that out, that there's only one. It's not a blowing up of cases over there. So it's only one individual. And I'm going to turn it back over to Troy to talk about vaccinations.
So a little bit about vaccinations. Last month I brought to the board a conversation that we were just implementing 4 vaccination clinics within our school district. We partnered with the state of Minnesota and had a high level participation. We had 4 clinics that offered 400 spots each, and we were successful in filling all those spots. And we're starting to see some of the results regarding that. Our last clinic and the second dose was just administered last Wednesday. And so on this report, these results are results that have been provided from us through the Minnesota Immunization Record software. So we're able to take all of our students, load it in, and it tells us how many students were vaccinated by what site. And so this is just the preliminary stuff, but as you look at it, we kind of loaded it from lowest to highest, and we included our staff as well. It's hard to see all of our graph, but our staff at the far right are at 84%, as you would kind of think from the time and ability and availability of vaccines. They've had the longest opportunity. And then we proceed to go to the left. We have Maple Grove, Park Center, Osseo, Maple Middle. Our middles and high schools, those students have also had a longer period of time for access for vaccinations. And our lowest results are our elementaries that have just come online for vaccinations. So there's definitely a difference between elementary, middle school, and high school. And just keep in mind that our middle school does have students that are in that age 11 or under range. So those percentages will be skewed a little bit there. Right now, in total for the district, our elementaries are at about 17% fully vaccinated. Our middle schools are at 47% vaccinated, and our high schools are at 65% vaccinated. And then as a combination of the whole, 30% of our student body at this time is fully vaccinated. We hope in the coming weeks, and we run this every couple of weeks, we hope to see the numbers on the elementary and middle continue to climb. I would say that we've been pretty stable on the high school numbers as I look to Colin, who gets to run this challenging report with the state. And then lastly, our staff at 84% has been pretty consistent as well for a percent of vaccination. The next slide, I just wanted to share, I know that we had interest last month about what we're going to do to continue to support and promote vaccinations. We continue to work with Hennepin County Health Services in regards to county vaccinations, and literally, I don't know, what was it, 7 hours ago, okay, we got an email saying, hey, we got some clinics popping up. And so I wanted to give this time for the community that's watching at large and that is here. I do know access for vaccinations for our youngest 5 to 11 have been a little challenging for some. So I want to put this out there. There's 3 clinics coming up. Tuesday, December 14th. Wait a minute, that's tonight. So if you got time, you got 12 minutes to get over to South Education Center, which is only in Richfield. So I know that it might be a challenge, but hey, wait. Wednesday, giving you a little short notice. Brookdale Library over on Shingle Creek Parkway. They'll be providing a clinic there as well. And then again, Tuesday, December 21st, right before Christmas, give your kids the gift of a vaccination, and that'll be over at Robbinsdale Middle School. I did talk to our partner over at Hennepin County. These were short notice because originally, as they've hosted these just like we did, the districts and the buildings that use them want to reserve them for their community and their students. But they've come to the part where they have space and access, and they don't want to leave those clinics open with nobody coming because it is a reservation, so there's a hyperlink there. But if you just Google COVID-19 response Hennepin County, you'll find those vaccination opportunities there as well. So just a little bit of an update on our rapid antigen testing. We are navigating to provide 2 different opportunities, both for our staff and our students. One of the primary goals of the district COVID team is to mitigate the spread of COVID. With the new rapid antigen tests that have been provided or procured by the school district, we believe we'll be able to help with the layered mitigation effort. Again, our goal is to keep students and staff at work and in school. And so we are onboarding this product. We've talked for about a month and a half about it coming in. And I'd say we're at about 90% capacity with our Binax now. And just in the last couple of weeks, we were offered a secondary product, which is the BD Veritor. It's a home COVID-19 testing product. And we will have the opportunity, we're currently providing the home testing kits with Veritor for all of our staff beginning this week. And so staff will get one kit which has 2 tests, and it works with the mobile app. And within 15 minutes, they know if they have COVID, if they've tested positive for COVID, if they should report to work or not, because again, our goal is to mitigate the spread within the schools. And then shortly after the holiday break, we will be sending out messaging and communication to all families. And they will be able to sign up quickly on an online app or to call our school site COVID coordinator and request one, and we'll be sending kits home with any families that are interested, and it's completely voluntary. We won't be handing it out to every student, so it's a voluntary opportunity for them. And then again, our mitigation strategy, we continue to have testing in our schools for students and staff. When we started the parental consent, which I know there was a lot of discussion here within the board, we went from 0 to, we have 3,735 as of today that have signed up and consented. And we continue to have discussions with parents when students show up in our nursing offices with symptoms, and we ask them if they want to consent. We ask them to fill the forms out and provide them to us, and then we'll provide it. Otherwise, we also are always willing to provide a take-home test kit that parents can do in the confinement of their home with their student, and then report the results back in order to return to school without having to quarantine for 10 days. The last, the next slide is one that we keep bringing every time. I want to promote and encourage our families and our community and our staff to begin to, or to always continue to look at our stay home if you're sick, and to mitigate our spread within schools. Our staff continue to be challenged, you know. Parents are in a tough situation because they need to get their kids to school, they need to get to work, and we have one symptom or another. We are finding more and more students that do show up, they have one symptom, and they're sent down to the office, either through testing or other methods. We find that they could be positive, they don't know it, and so then we have to look at other students and the impact of classrooms. And so we continue to monitor classrooms, we continue to monitor symptoms. My team that's here with me tonight and the others that are behind the scene work very hard to minimize exposures and to keep our classrooms open and to keep our space healthy for our students, our scholars, and our staff. So that's very important to us as we continue that process. With that, I will turn it over to Corey.
Yeah, thank you, and we'll entertain any questions and comments. One additional part that you've all heard a lot about is the challenges our hospitals are seeing. And we have a certified nursing assistant program at Osseo Senior High, and we participated in a call earlier this week. There's a real concern around the challenges of qualified healthcare providers in our long-term care facilities, and if that is not addressed, that'll add additional pressure on our hospitals that are already over capacity. So there's a real push to surround the state for any interest in people getting their CSN, or I'm sorry, CNAs. And we've been fortunate to have that kind of a career pathway option in the district. So we're engaged in that conversation to see what else might we be able to do if there's interest. So just a side note that's been a conversation around the challenges that the healthcare medical field is really experiencing right now. And then everything we covered tonight, as we said last month, we will watch this very closely, and then as we move into January, come back to you with the most recent up-to-date information, and really looking closely at we evaluate the ability to eventually move from a county case rate model to a school case rate model, and really look at that as a direction we want to go based on some of the guidance from the board. So I know it's not a decision night, we just want to give you an update on kind of where things stand now, and then we'll watch how the winter break unfolds, and we do really appreciate everyone's efforts. We've so far been able to keep us in school all year, and we're really kind of looking forward to the mitigation efforts, which is many. I know we talk a lot about masks, but it's many things that do it matter that all add up to make sure we're as successful as we can be. So with that, Chair Dawson Walton, I'll turn it back to you for any
Sure.
questions or comments before we move on our agenda.
All right, does anybody have any questions or comments? Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're so lucky in Osseo to have such a great, smart, dedicated team, really working to mitigate the impact of COVID in our schools, keep kids in schools. I was just wondering, there was a lot of information really quickly. If you could go back over this process that students can do with parental consent to get tested in school, and that allows them to go back to class if they're negative?
So yes, so the process begins with consent, and so we've put online a digital form, and we have it in multiple languages, and then we also have the ability to talk to parents directly if they're in nurse's office, if they're symptomatic, if they have two of the more common or one of the least common symptoms, to be able to be assessed in the nurse's office. And before the rapid antigen testing, we typically had to send students home. They had to be quarantined for 10 days. Parents had to work around care and daycare and in coverage for that, and also the remote learning aspects of that. And that's been a challenge for families. So our goal in this new rapid antigen testing is to try to keep students in school. And so if they do test negative and they're in the office and they don't have, we still have to be mindful of other symptoms. So if someone, has got a fever or something else, they could return home, monitor that fever, and if it gets better, they can come back and they don't have to quarantine for 10 days due to that negative test result. So we are using that, and we've seen some very good results with that, and the ability to keep students in school and in class, and staff for that matter as well.
Thank you. Do you have a rough sense of what the overall percentage of our students have signed consent forms so that we can speed along that process?
Well, at 3,700, you know, now you're asking me to do math here, and we have
You want
21,000 kiddos. So 37 of 4,000 out of 21,000, what the heck's the math? Someone help me here, I'm on the spot.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
There's a lot of calculators here. 19%. 19%.
All
All right.
Whoa. Laurel for the
Laurel
win.
saves the day. Good.
She's a shrewd negotiator too, let me tell you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, anyone else have any comments or questions?
Quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just want to say thank you for the presentation. We actually got some new information today that we haven't had in the past, so I know that took some time to put together. One of the questions that I had is really just knowing the impact that COVID has had on staffing and the ability to keep scholars in the classroom. I was wondering if you could talk about any work that's being done either at the school site level or at the county to better understand what the barriers are or the reasons for the disparities that were displayed in the vaccination rates that seem to be very much geographic. So yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little more about that. I do have a little bit of concern about the vaccination rate in a few months in half of our district, just based on the information that we've received already.
So as we just pulled that data together, we literally just got the results, a day and a half ago. We've been trying to disaggregate that a little bit, and we've had a lot of conversations about it. And I'm gonna be really honest with you, when I look at the results, I also looked at how we set up the vaccination clinics. We did it, literally, we scattered it across the entire district, as I mentioned last month. Our last site to fill the full vaccination slots was Park Center, our furthest east site, but it did fill. The question is who participated and who attended, because this is the early vaccination process. So we saw a lot of families that have been waiting and waiting and waiting for that 5 to 11-year-old jump. And so we could have had families from all over the district. We could have had families from our west side. It's not known yet. We haven't had those conversations, and we don't have a plotter to say, here's where everybody came from to go to. But we continue to, and we see this the same as well with the number of participations around people that have signed consent for rapid antigen testing too. We see a higher participation on our west side right now than we do on our east. We continue to promote it, so we're working directly with the principals and administrators and our COVID coordinators at those sites to promote that and to promote the communication on it. And just as rapidly as the announcement came early this morning about Hennepin County providing additional shot clinics that are somewhat focused in some of those sites on the east side, like closer to Robbinsdale, that type of thing, we jumped on it. I kind of scrambled. I'm like, I literally got this announcement 7 hours ago, but I felt like it was important to share it here, and Kay's sharing it also on our communication side as well. We'll continue to look at and focus on the availability. Hennepin County has reached out to me and asked if our district would be interested in doing additional vaccination clinics. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and as we're trying to just maintain and apply the mitigations, the new testing we have, then to ask for that. So we're looking to partner with Hennepin County and other community outreaches to provide space and buildings for vaccinations. And I think we got to continue to work with our sites too to promote and connect with their families and maybe our PTO and our PTO organizations to promote some of that. So it's a delicate conversation that we're still having with the sites on that side and our families. And we're still also waiting to see what these numbers look like. These are early numbers. We debated about showing them, but I think it's important to know where we're at, where we're headed, and what it's going to look like over the next several weeks and months. I do believe the K-5, and you saw a lot of those east side where K-5 elementaries were at the lowest. We have to give it time, because it did take time for our older 12-year-old plus to get to that level. It didn't just come overnight, so we got to continue to work on that. And we've seen a higher participation on the secondary side grow at the back end of the opportunity, and we're hoping the same thing will occur with our elementary. We prefer it to be at the front end, but I'm thinking it might be very similar.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I just had one question. Sure. So for the rapid testing, how do you happen to know or have data around the efficacy of the test in our school setting? So how many students or teachers are taking the rapid test, it's showing that they don't have COVID, and then maybe a few days later
they end up still very sick and testing again in a different way or a different facility and ends up positive.
Do we have any that?
None of that.
Okay.
And that we know this time.
Thank you.
Thank you for the information. I think this is really helpful. It's great to have the packet in front of us while we're discussing it. I think that's a great add, and I know it is right before the meeting, so I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the detailed information and being able to see the trend line. So this really meets the data requests that we've been asking for. I believe Anoka Hennepin just announced that they are going to mask choice for K-6 starting January 18th as well. So I think it's important to observe kind of movement around us and data around us as we make a data-informed decision coming into January.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we've been evaluating that same model and really just want to see where we look, how we look when we come back from break. But you know, we've been doing that same evaluation on that transition to that more school level data, what you saw here tonight. So now that we're beginning to get that kind of accuracy, know that we're looking at that and we'll have more in January.
Great, thank you.
That's a little bit about the data. We showed you the one slide that shows the actual status of COVID within our buildings. It's straight data from our students and staff divided by the total number of staff and students in the building. So you saw that trend line, and that's a little bit of what Anoka Hennepin is transitioning as well. And I just want to note too that they were a blended. They had K-5 was masked, or K-6. K-6 was masked, and 7-12 was optional or strongly recommended.
All right, anyone else? Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. It's good information, and as we kind of look through the future and see where we're at, so thank you. I just have to say, this has kind of been almost like a bittersweet evening with the retirements and recognizing just so many staff. And then I just have to say, with Michael, with you leaving, I think on behalf of all, congratulations. You've been such a key piece to what we do as a board, especially later as we talk about and take action on our strategic roadmap. And congratulations on your award. And I think that even more so, what I've seen, at least what really sticks out to me is you're intentional, you just care, for our kids. And so I just want to say that, we'll definitely miss you, but we're so excited for your future endeavors. So thank you. Anybody else have any?
Yeah, can I just jump on, piggyback on that? Mr. Lehan, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to work with you, and I am sure that your next endeavor will appreciate you as much as I do, hopefully even more. I just want to say thank you for leaving with us your servant leadership, talking about students, scholars in a way that many of us hadn't talked about scholars in the past. And so in all my learnings that I work with lots of different educational organizations, there are lots of Lehanisms that I use now that I really appreciate. So thank you. I just wanted to say that.
Okay.
I think you might be getting a lot of requests to come visit Florida in the middle of January.
I claim February.
Yeah. Okay.
The whole month.
All right, our next agenda item is school board reports. Director Grady, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. First one is I had a Northwest Suburban Integration School District meeting, and I believe this was referenced in Points of Pride. There's a lottery for the Magnet Schools program. Priority application opened October 15th and closes December 31st. And currently there is a sign up on the website for a tour of Weaver Lake on January 11th and February 1st. I also participated in the fiscal meeting where we went over fiscal year 2023 financial planning, an enrollment update, the fiscal year 2023 tax levy, and the next meeting is a long-range financial planning advisory meeting on January 21st. And then finally, I have a policy committee report, and I will read that to you now. So the meeting was on December 7th. The school board policy committee met here at the ESC at 4:30 on Tuesday, December 7th. Thomas Brooks, myself, and Tanya Simons were in attendance. Also participating were Superintendent Corey McIntyre, district-wide principal Amy Janicek, and Osseo Senior High principal and former district-wide principal Sarah Vernig, and General Counsel Tim Palmentier. During the meeting, the committee also discussed the following policies. Policy 504, which is student dress and appearance. Policy 505, the student's cell phone and technology policy, and policy 506, student discipline. The discussion pertaining to the student discipline policy 506 centered around discipline practices and implementation of the current policy. The principals present provided their perspectives on current trends they are observing with respect to student discipline, and committee members expressed a general interest that student discipline and potential consequences be consistent, fair, and equitable. Ultimately, no changes were brought forward with respect to this policy. The committee also discussed the student dress policy 504 and related procedure. Specifically, the committee discussed the administration's recommendation that the current policy requirement that student dress not offend community standards be replaced with an expectation that student dress, quote, not violate school district policy or reasonable school expectations. Some question was raised about whether the proposed language was sufficiently detailed. Finally, the committee reviewed the current cell phone policy 505. While the committee did not have any concerns with the minor proposed revisions of administration pertaining to the use of personal electronic devices while operating motor vehicles or using a device in manner that interferes with the safe operation of school transportation, there were some questions about how the policy as a whole is interpreted and enforced in different classrooms and schools. In order to address the outstanding questions of committee members, it was agreed that Tim Palmentier would connect with the committee members individually before moving any proposed changes to policy 504 or 505 forward for the next reading. The next policy committee meeting is scheduled to be held at the ESC in this building Tuesday, March 8th at 4:30 p.m. Policy committee meetings are open to the public and community members are encouraged to attend. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Brooks.
I am just going to briefly give one of 4 committee reports. Actually, didn't even realize I was on so many committees until you said my name. So,
surprise.
I won't go too much in depth. I know this is included in the consent agenda today, but I was just going to give sort of a brief update on Brooklyn Bridge Alliance. So again, this is included and will hopefully be approved in the consent agenda, but the Brooklyn Bridge Alliance Board has just been going through, I think, a little bit of growth and development just as a board and an entity. And you see that in the consent agenda today in terms of sort of redefining what some of the roles are of the executive leaders on the board, really wrestling with and grappling with who should serve on the board, how we should expand the board, potentially what that could look like in the future as the Brooklyn Bridge Alliance potentially continues to grow. And so one of the things that we're approving today is college partners becoming voting directors. So our college partners are already part of the Brooklyn Bridge Alliance. They show up to all the meetings, they participate, they also pay. And so this was sort of I think a no-brainer for for actually all of the board, for them to actually have the ability to vote. Another addition is that we are looking to add 4 young adults to the board as well that will also have the ability to vote. So, one of the reasons Brooklyn Bridge Alliance exists is to elevate youth voice. And they are set up in a way that I think many other organizations, including our district, just aren't really set up to do yet. And so I think this is actually really special to have them involved. It would include 2 older young adults from the college systems, and then 2 from the youth council that would be, I believe, slightly younger. And then they are also looking to set some sort of direction in terms of terms on that board. So they're looking for those that are appointed to the board to serve 2 years instead of 1. Of course, at the end of the day, that's up to our individual bodies to decide, but that's also included in there. So that was really the most important part that I wanted to cover. They are also pushing forward with the Youth on Board initiative, and I know that I've reached out, and I think there are some development opportunities for them to help us with our student representatives as well. But yeah, I think that's it, my report.
All right, thank you. Director Mosqueda Jones.
The only thing I'll be reporting on tonight is the District 287 meetings that we've had. We spent quite a few days interviewing candidates for the new superintendent of District 287, who will start July 1st. And after narrowing down to 3 amazing candidates, it was a very difficult decision. Those 3 candidates had extensive full-day interviews with several stakeholders in the district, including staff, students, parents, member districts, teams. It was decided to enter into negotiations with Marcy Dowd. Marcy Dowd is currently working in St. Paul as a deputy director, and she was called that evening and accepted to enter into negotiations to be the next superintendent of District 287. The only other business that we were able to sneak in with all those meetings was settling the contract with 2209, woohoo, and then our unaudited financial report that is required to be reported by the in a specific time period in December. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Director Simon.
I don't have any specific reports for committees that met, though I would add under the policy, I think committee, we did have extensive conversation in terms of what we're hearing from families in the district about the student experience, what we're hearing from staff, about how we can continue to communicate the challenges. We did have conversation about how threats are assessed, and I think that's something we need to continue to communicate on, given especially the most recent one. And so I think that that's information that we can probably do a much better job at sharing out to parents on the work that's being done, the procedures that go along with some of these issues that we're seeing. So I do want to really emphasize that that was a significant portion of our meeting and conversation in that. And we're a week and a half before we go into break, and just please take that time to encourage your kids to share what they're experiencing at school, and to honor their teachers, and to be respectful of their teachers, and just we all have such an important role to play in ensuring that we have the culture that we desire in this district, and we'll touch on that when we get to the strategic plan and in our classrooms. And just please continue to have that conversation with your kids and reinforce that support for being respectful and honoring to our staff members in the buildings. So I do want to note that. Secondly, for District 279 Foundation, this Friday is the due date for donation forms, so you can still go out to the district279foundation.org. You can still sponsor the event. You can still donate items. And registration for the event will open January 20, coming up here in January. So please check that out, and if you own a business, if you know people who can donate items and support this event, this is a really key event for the foundation. So just want to share that.
Thank you. Director Douglas.
I do have 2 reports. Our Kayak, or Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, met on Wednesday, December 1st virtually. In attendance was Superintendent Corey McIntyre, myself, Director Mosqueda Jones, as well as Assistant Superintendent Michael Lehan, Kelly Parpart, and Stephen Flisk, as well as Jeremy Willie. And we had guest speakers Kate Emmons, Amy Janasek, Jill Lene, Andy Bedeau, Jan Bitzer, and Elizabeth Zhang. So we discussed this committee is fairly new, so we're really just getting running with it. And we spoke about accelerated learning use digital tools, things like our Schoology and Seesaw apps, which are being used at the elementary level and secondary schools. So we spoke about those kind of at length, I feel like, as well as restorative practices, which is a major part of our district's mission and vision, the components of that. And then our future meeting will actually be February 2nd. And we will be talking about alternative delivery of specialized instruction services, multilingual learning programming, counseling services, and our RAMP certification. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think we'll have a lot of good information come out of that meeting. And that's all I have on that report. Last night was our DPAC meeting. I serve on that committee with Director Brooks, who is unfortunately unable to attend. So the way that committee works, I think I've explained before, we break out into subcommittees. So I really only have the subcommittee that I was a part of. We only spent about 10 minutes as a full group, maybe less. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about the actual data that's used to drive decision making. So we spent a lot of time talking about our career and technical education programming in the Data and Assessment Committee. And as a board, we will actually be discussing that at length in our January meeting, January 11th, I believe. So I look forward to seeing further development on that, and I think the rest of the board is really excited about that. Our a little bit more information about that is our CTE is all of the stranding programs that each of the high schools have for students to participate in, where upon graduation and completion of their program, they will leave high school with some sort of certificate in the area of study that they're learning, whether it be nursing, automotive, business management. Superintendent McIntyre was just speaking about the nursing assistant certification. So it's a really excellent opportunity for our students to get involved in, and you really want to start looking into those programs as soon as possible, 8th grade, 9th grade, to enroll your child into those programs. So that's what we spoke about.
All right. I feel like you're going to say something.
I'll go after you, but I do have an addition
Okay.
to the report, since we're in this
All right.
mode of reporting.
Sure, I just have two, RISE committee, working closely with the FACE team to map out the committee's roadmap for the school year. So identify 2021 and 22 goals. So kind of in that same vein of just getting started and mapping out our goals, informing and influencing some upcoming engagement opportunities and summer programming. And then the committee also had an opportunity to review and share feedback on our vision cards for the district. So the last update I have is the Association of Metropolitan School Districts. We just adopted our legislative platform, and it's really 5 major areas around stabilizing education funding and mental health, and diversifying our teacher workforce, ensuring safe and modern school facilities, and reducing mandates and enhance local control. So that was, and we're looking forward to our legislative breakfast with the leadership in the legislature in January. And we also adopted and approved the strategic plan. And so we're really looking at what those metrics look like. And again, that's with all the various districts within the metro area. That's all I have. So
I'd like to just take a moment,
Sure.
since we took a moment to kind of honor Dr. Lehan's work here in the district and his leaving. Our transitioning's already begun, and tonight, after our process of trying to find a replacement for Michael, we selected Dr. Brian Bass, who's with us tonight, and he's already spending time with Michael and with us, learning about our system and all the work that is in front of us. So I thought I'd take a moment just to introduce Brian. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, buddy. Dr. Bass has really a 20-year career in education as a teacher, coach, assistant principal, and at the executive level, and has led schools and school leaders in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Edina school districts, among other experiences. And what really stood out as we were searching for, you can imagine this is a tough selection for us to make, and a critical one. Dr. Bass's ability to demonstrate his knowledge of use of data, evidence-based instructional practices, continuous improvement skill sets, the value that he places on partnership and collaboration in our school communities and across stakeholder groups as we work to implement, stronger accountability measures in our system. So those skill sets are really important. And along with his innovative and strategic thinking skills, we felt like this was a really good match for us. So we're excited to have Dr. Bass join us. I thought maybe I would just give him a moment to address the board. And he'll be here full-time January 3rd, so Blank will be coming back from the winter break, and he's here. So he's already been giving us some of his valuable time. Dr. Bass.
Sure. Chair Dawson Walton, members of the board, Superintendent McIntyre, I just want to start by thanking you for this opportunity to join the Osseo Area Schools community, the family. I look forward to serving the mission that's written there above your heads there. And I can't wait to get started and advance the work of the district.
Yeah.
So
All right.
thank you for the warm
you.
welcome.
Thank you to Mr. Lehan for, giving his time to also help us make that a smooth transition. So over the holiday season, right? So, yeah, thank you, Chair Dawson Walton, for giving me just a moment to introduce Dr. Bass.
All right, well, welcome, Dr. Bass. We're excited to have you, for sure. Okay, so next agenda item is a consent agenda. Board members, are there any items that you'd like to remove for separate consideration? All right, is a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Director Simons, seconded by Director Mosqueda Jones. Is there any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay? Okay, motion passes 6-0. So what we're gonna, since we're 2.5 hours into this meeting and we still have a couple more items, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess, and so we will come back at 8:29. All right, we're gonna move right back into our agenda. Action item number 1 is the 2021 payable 2022 levy limitation certification. Information will be shared by John Morissette, Executive Director of Finance and Operations.
Thank you, Chair Dawson Walton, Superintendent McIntyre, and school board members. As mentioned earlier in the Truth in Taxation presentation, the proposed levy for Osseo area schools for taxes payable in 2022 and for our district's 22-23 school year is $102,134,057.19, which is a 1.6% increase from taxes payable in 2021. If approved, because of the increase in the tax capacity at our district, the average taxpayer would realize an estimated $3 decrease in their school district taxes on a $250,000 home next year. Administration recommends the approval of the Pay 22 levy for the exact amount of $102,134,057.19.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the 2021 payable 2022 levy limitation certification?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Everybody at once.
All right.
We all agree.
Motion by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Brooks. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, John. All right, the next action item is approval of the district strategic roadmap. I just want to say before we move forward, you know, we're going to take action on our strategic roadmap that lays out our mission, vision, core values, and strategic directions for our district for the next 3 to 5 years. And, you know, a lot of time, input, expertise, and a lot of energy has been put into this plan that started early in 2020, just before COVID shut down so much of our world. It's been 2 challenging years since we moved to begin a strategic planning process in Osseo area schools. And in spite of our challenges, we have proceeded in the development of this new strategic plan. And many voices were included in its development, from input on the desired daily experience to input and analysis through our equity context analysis process. And now in our governance role, we are setting the direction and vision of the district for the coming years. So this roadmap is one of the final components of our district's strategic portfolio, and other components include a 3-year operational plan, vision cards, a board 3-year plan, and department and school improvement plans. And our superintendent's evaluation will be tied to this plan moving forward. Is there a motion to approve the district strategic roadmap?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Grady. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I definitely want to express my gratitude for everybody that participated in this process. As you said, this has been an extensive process. It began pre-COVID, shortly after we hired Superintendent McIntyre. So many hours were placed into this. It had to be put on pause, just as we dealt with the operational challenges. So I hope everybody is aware of the full process and has felt that they have had an opportunity to participate in the process in different ways. Even though it's been such a long duration, it may not feel like we remember when this started nearly 2.5 years ago. I'm really proud of where we've landed as a district in this work. But if we don't live this out, if this doesn't become a reality in the desired experiences, and I remember we had this conversation about classroom to boardroom, if we don't feel that this is lived out at the classroom level for everybody, then it's really just words on a piece of paper. So I know that we have all of the actions and the cards that go with it and the monitoring. And I think when we say this is what we want to be, we have to be able to have the feedback mechanisms to say when we're falling short. So I think as we think about implementing this beyond the vision, beyond just the cards and the measures and all of the tactics, having a robust feedback system so that we can hear from our staff members, from our leadership, from our families, from our scholars when they're saying, nope, we kind of heard it tonight too, that there's still that we're missing maybe on belonging, that we're missing on transparency. So how do we make sure that we're hearing that feedback and holding ourselves accountable to this? So, so this is really, I think, work that this board, this collection of 6 people together can feel proud of, and continue to provide your input on this, please, as community members. And we need all of our community partners and stakeholders to know this is what our district is about. This is the values of our district, and help us support these values. Our city partners, our community partners, just the entire surround. And I would love to be able to, I hope we have a plan to share this with all of those stakeholders and partners so that they know what our district is working toward and can partner with us to achieve it. So thank you to everybody who's been with us on this very long journey. And now we got to hold ourselves accountable to it.
Thank you.
I would just add, I was going to make some similar comments, so I won't repeat everything you just said. But I will just add that this really has been, I feel like, as a board, a labor of love. We have worked really hard on this, and we have butted heads as board members in a lot of ways. But ultimately, we all have the same common goals and end results that we're looking for. And I just admire the fact that even though we differ in how we get there in a lot of ways, oftentimes, and we had to have some really difficult conversations together. We did it as best we could with respect, and we worked really hard at building our relationships with one another and increasing the transparency of this process with our community members as we went through those really hard conversations. So I just really wanted to acknowledge that that work that was done and how challenging it was and how necessary it was for each of us to go through that together. So thank you to my colleagues and for our community members for coming alongside us and providing input and having us look really critically at some of these issues and core values. So thank you.
Well,
I think what I'm going to add to this discussion, because I think there were some really great points brought up by my colleagues already, as a teacher who's been teaching for 30 years and who spent a good chunk of her career in this district, we find a lot of times that there are things like this that are hanging up on walls that just seem to be words. And I feel like this process has probably been one of the most robust processes that I've seen in order to make sure that we are getting voices that aren't always heard at the table. And so I am really proud of the way that our strategic roadmap has been laid out, the content of it, and just want to remind everyone that this is the up here view, and that we have a lot of staff members and community members and students who have worked really hard on all the nitty-gritty things that need to happen. The vision cards, the metrics on how we're going to evaluate if we're doing this, how we're implementing it into the classroom, how we're implementing it with our leadership, how we're sharing it with the community, what it's going to look like when we do that with our amazing communications team. So I'm really excited to move forward with this, and it's been quite a process.
thank you.
Yeah, I would I'd add a little bit. This has been a lengthy process, at least for me. Since I joined the board, this was, I think, one of the first and one of the biggest opportunities for collaboration amongst the board that we don't always get to display in these public meetings that come up once a month, particularly when there are so many controversial or contentious items that end up on the agendas. And so I am very proud of the work that went into this, the collaboration, the healthy debate that went into it, down to every last word that's listed in the document. We were very intentional about all of it. And I know when we look at the core values, one of the things that we really kept in mind in defining what those were is what that would mean to each of our scholars individually, down to the elementary level. So we sort of pictured our scholars reciting these words on a daily basis and working toward them. And so that's really just what I wanted to speak to, is just the intent and the passion that came from every single board member and administration to create this document. You know, there were certainly some areas in the document that I certainly wanted to be worded stronger, but at the end of the day, again, this is like it was said, a labor of love that is a collaboration, and I think a mutual ground for all of us. So I will be supporting the strategic roadmap.
Okay, thank you. Director Brady?
The strategic roadmap is about how our people, our policies, and our practices are aligned with our mission, core values, and our vision for the success for each and every scholar in the Osseo District. I agree with Dr. Simons that the accountability piece is paramount. I believe that the accountability along with this roadmap will create the actions that will address, acknowledge, and reduce systemic disparities, barriers, inequities, and that each of us will lead, develop, and align our district towards continuous improvement that will create a sense of belonging and inclusion for every scholar in a way that supports them in reaching their individual full potential. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Well, this is really exciting, and it's the beginning of implementing a new path forward in Osseo area schools with a clear vision and desire for accountability. I just echo, I mean, I am very proud of this work as well as a district and school board, and truly to our scholars and families and staff and administrators that have really helped us get to this point. And like all of us, we really like struggled with some of the language, you know, whether it's equity, or I mean, whatever it was, just what's showing up in the document. But I think all of us do, like Director Douglas said, have the same goal. And I think all of us want, we don't want any of our scholars and families to feel disenfranchised or, you know, disregarded or not supported in this plan. So in the end, you know, I think knowing we have included so many voices again and perspectives that of our diverse thinking board, that we've come to agreement, and I do believe this is the roadmap that we really do need and to bring that aspiration to our district. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. All right, motion passes 6-0. Congratulations, everyone.
clap.
All right, yes, thank you. 2 years. Okay. Back to business. The next action item is approval of the 2022 legislative platform. We'll see John again, Mr. Morstead.
Don't see John.
Paging John Morstead.
Paging.
It's the John Show.
We'll be running down the hall as we speak.
That's what I was gonna say.
Here he comes.
This is your show tonight, you know,
Planning
so.
this, so. Thank you. So the platform document that you have in your packet is the tool used to communicate to legislators and other stakeholders the priorities that have been identified to further the school district's mission. School board members reviewed the draft platform at the December 7th, 2021 work session, and feedback from that meeting was integrated into the document. While the document is specific to our needs in Osseo area schools, the items also align with other major educational groups, including AMSD, MSBA, MASA, and MASBO. With that, the administration recommends approval of the legislative platform as proposed.
All right, is there a motion to approve the 2022 legislative platform?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Brooks. Is there any discussion? No? All right. Thank you so much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, motion passes 6-0. Thank you. The next action item is policy 652, instructional materials selection, production, and reevaluation. General Counsel Tim Palmetier will facilitate input on this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair Dawson, the Walton School Board members, and McIntyre. The action item before you is an appeal of a decision reached by the District Reevaluation Committee. which denied a request to discontinue use of the book Born a Crime by Trevor Noah as an instructional material in the high school English curriculum. As stated by District Policy 652, district residents, students, or employees have the right to express concerns or objections relative to the appropriateness or acceptability of instructional materials. The process for considering reevaluation of instructional materials has been delegated to school administration and is set forth in detail in Policy 652B. In this case, Ms. Celeste Runquist, who addressed the board earlier today and will have an opportunity again today, completed a request to reevaluate the book in question and raised concerns about its appropriateness, particularly for students under the age of 17. In keeping with Procedure 652, a reevaluation committee was appointed to hear Ms. Runquist's concerns. A committee of 10 persons, which included district and building administration, teachers, media specialists, parent and community members, and students, met on November 3rd of 2021 to consider the results or the request for reevaluation. The members of the committee were provided a copy of the book to read and review in advance of the meeting. During the meeting, testimony was also provided by Ms. Runquist, Dr. Jill Kine, who is the district's secondary curriculum coordinator, and Mr. Blake Jorgensen, who's a 9th grade teacher from Osseo Senior High, who has taught the book. Members of the committee then expressed their views on the appropriateness of the material. Ultimately, a 10-0 vote was taken, and the committee determined that the book should be retained as part of the high school English curriculum. Under Procedure 652B, either the challenger or the person selecting the instructional material can appeal the decision of the committee to the school board. The procedure states that the school board is to consider the merits of the appeal. In order to comply with this requirement and to give this matter a fair hearing, Ms. Runquist and Ms. Tan, who chaired the reevaluation committee and sits on the District Planning and Advisory Council, DPAC, will each be provided 5 minutes to present their respective positions to the school board. This will be followed by deliberation and potential questions from the school board. Since this is appeal and not a separate factual inquiry, an appropriate question for the board in determining whether it should sustain the committee's decision should be whether the committee's determination was reasonable or whether it was supported by substantial evidence. So with this in mind, we're going to ask that Ms. Runquist please come forward to express her concerns with respect to the committee's determination. Then we'll follow with Ms. Tan having 5 minutes of equal time.
I didn't notice there was a step stool here. That might have been helpful. Oh, that makes me feel so much taller. Well, good evening, everyone, once again. I will try to stick to this 5 minutes as best as I can. Superintendent McIntyre and school board members. Is it the district's job to expose my child to sexually explicit material? That's a question that begs to be answered tonight. At the outset, it's important for me to say that this is not about banning books. On November 3rd, I had the opportunity to present my concerns regarding the book Born a Crime by Trevor Noah to a reevaluation committee, as already stated, consisting of 7 district staff members and 3 high school students. My concerns were regarding this book being a required reading for my son's 9th grade HP English class and a majority of the other 9th grade English classes at Osseo Senior High School. It should be noted that this book is not being taught at Maple Grove Senior High School or Park Center. I shared my concerns with this committee. I touched on the vulgar language with words such as the F word and the SH word being used dozens of times throughout the book, and there being anti-Semitic material that could be quite offensive to many, and strong violence. But ultimately, my greatest concern was over sexually explicit content that is not appropriate for my child or any other 14-year-old student to be exposed to in an English class. I believe that my concerns regarding the sexually explicit content have been minimalized. In fact, they were hardly touched on at all in the meeting notes from November 3rd. What is most concerning to me is that even after sharing my concerns about the sexual content and reading excerpts from the book, the committee voted 10-0 to keep this book as part of the curriculum. This is my reason for this appeal. I am concerned that the sexually explicit examples I gave were not reason enough to merit a thorough evaluation as to how this book and others like it are being allowed into the classrooms at Osseo High School without parental consent. To assure you that I'm not being overly sensitive about this material, permit me to share 2 of the concerning excerpts to further make the point. The first is on page 128. Trevor, don't forget, you're having sex with a woman in her mind before you're having sex with her vagina. Trevor, foreplay begins during the day. It doesn't begin in the bedroom. I'd be like, what? What is foreplay? What does that even mean? And on page 164, the only girls in my life were the naked ones on my computer. While I downloaded music and messed around in chat rooms, I dabble in porn sites here and there. No video, of course, only pictures. With online porn today, you just drop straight into the madness. But with dial-up, it took so long for the images to load, it was almost gentlemanly compared to now. You'd spend a good 5 minutes looking at her face, getting to know her as a person. Then a few minutes later, you'd get to boobs. By the time you got to her vagina, you'd spent a lot of quality time together. How are books with R-rated content being used in 9th grade English without parental consent nor any notification to parents? This district has a policy in place that if a book is approved by the district, there is no expectation for parents to be informed of concerning material. To be clear, again, this is not about censorship, as some have even said earlier tonight. I have read this book in its entirety. I can tell you firsthand that there are significant issues with this book being the one required reading for the trimester. While this book may be intended to promote dialogue about the semester theme, which was identity, there are many other books that the school could use to discuss the same themes, which include more appropriate content and still meet the state standards. According to the publisher's own website, in their teacher's guide for Born a Crime, it states, Born a Crime is an appropriate selection for college students, and if in high school, for grades 11 and 12. Our district has a history of using Common Sense Media to review books. When I reached out to the website about a review for this book, the response I received was this. Our website only reviews books written for kids ages 2 through 17. This book has been rated 18+. Also notable is that there is another version of this book written for junior audiences that contains non-explicit content. Some members of the committee said that all high school-aged kids are around bad language and that they learn about pornography and are exposed to it in middle school. This was really a wrong assumption. They minimized my concerns as a parent over these exact items and normalized the behavior of the book. Families should not be having to opt their children out of material that is inappropriate in the first place. Yes, I have younger children, and we do not expect to see them sitting in separate classrooms for a trimester of learning because R-rated material is being covered in class. As a parent with a younger child who receives special education services, I hold significant concerns about them having to work their way through such reading material and receiving the necessary services to comprehend it. I believe there should be a process by which parents are made aware ahead of time about what content will be covered in class, just like with the health curriculum. There must be choices so that other kids don't end up isolated in another classroom for the first 20 minutes of English class reading their own book, like my son. We said we should not be isolating kids just because they have different moral standards or convictions. This is not inclusion, it's exclusion. I would ask that in light of the information that I have shared with you this evening, that you would consider overturning the result from the November 3rd meeting. The process by which this book and others like it are being approved for class use needs to be thoroughly reevaluated and investigated. If the district is standing behind such material in our classrooms, what is the line for what is not appropriate? Thank you for your time.
At this time, Ms. Tan. Thank you.
Good evening, school board members, Superintendent McIntyre, cabinet members, and members of the viewing audience. My name is Rose Tan, and I am chair of the district level Instructional Materials Reevaluation Committee. I'm here tonight to share the committee's findings to retain the book Born a Crime for instructional use in grades 9 through 12. On November 3rd, the committee met after reading the challenged book to hear remarks from the challenger and representatives of the district regarding the educational and instructional merits of the book. After hearing remarks and engaging in a thorough discussion, the committee unanimously decided to retain the book for use as an available curriculum option for all high school students. There were two main areas that the committee focused on during its deliberation: overall content and instructional use. Born a Crime addresses the themes of identity, racism, apartheid, institutional racism, sexism, classism, and offers a comparative analysis of South Africa and the United States. These themes are told through the eyes of Trevor Noah as he recounts various childhood experiences growing up during and after apartheid in South Africa. In evaluating the overall content, we recognize that the book has a number of distinguishing features when compared to other texts in use. This book was written by an author with a diverse background and diverse perspectives. The book was written so that many students are able to see themselves in the author and relate to his experiences as they read the book. And the author is still alive and is a public figure that is accessible to high school age students. We also recognize that literature is a form of art, and there will always be competing opinions on the acceptability of any form of literature. While there were concerns surrounding the use of profanity and references to sex and pornography, the committee agreed that the book needs to be examined as a whole and in context. The committee agreed that the use of profanity was part of the author's voice. The use of the language was intentional, but not gratuitous. Students on the committee noted that they hear similar or worse language among peer groups, digital media, and music lyrics. The committee felt that the use of the language wasn't to normalize the language, but for emphasis. Similarly, the committee noted that the references to sex and pornography were brief and were used to illustrate specific points the author made in each short story. As a whole, the number of times profane words are used and the number of times sex and pornography is referenced is low compared to the total word count of more than 86,000 words in the book. The committee was advised on the approval process for new texts and how Born a Crime connects to state learning standards. After a new text proposal form is submitted, curriculum coordinators read the proposed text, engage in discussions with other staff about the text, and consult a number of book reviews from a wide variety of sources. Curriculum coordinators also evaluate a text's connection to state learning standards and its overall value to the student learning experience. When a text is approved, it is approved with the knowledge that it may become required reading for all students. For those students and families with a high level of discomfort with the selected instructional materials, teachers work with students and their families to select alternative texts that fulfills the same benchmarks as the selected classroom instructional material. In this context, Born a Crime applies to Minnesota Reading Benchmark 9466, which is to analyze a particular point of view or cultural experience reflected in a work of literature from outside the United States, drawing on a wide reading of world literature. Indeed, the common thread that ties each short story together in Born a Crime is Trevor Noah's search for his identity as a mixed-race child in South Africa. Additionally, Minnesota Writing Benchmark 9733 calls students to write narratives and other creative texts, develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, well-chosen details, and well-structured event sequences. Born a Crime is used to demonstrate the technical components of constructing narratives and other creative works, while also demonstrating author voice as students construct their own narratives. For these reasons, the committee found that the instructional value of the book, diverse perspectives presented, the uniqueness of the author, connection to state learning standards, and available reading alternatives outweighed the request to remove the book as an approved text for high school students. On behalf of the reevaluation committee, thank you for the opportunity to share our findings.
So with that, Chair Dawson Walton, I'll turn it back to you for the school board to address the appeal.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to affirm the November 3rd, 2021 reevaluation committee determination?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Director Brooks, seconded by Director Mosqueda Jones. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Superintendent McIntyre, I'm missing some information and I'm hoping that you can clear up, just in terms of the term that was used, required reading, and then there being some available alternatives. What's the process around that? Is there a list of alternatives that is offered at the beginning? Is there some sort of summary that's sent out to parents so they're aware of what our students might be reading? Like, what is our standard process around that?
So I believe, is members of our curriculum department here?
Yeah, that's correct. Ms. Bedeau is here and would be prepared to address, I think, a number of those questions.
Good evening, Superintendent McIntyre, Chair, and school board members. So yes, when there is a required text, there is usually notification, say at the beginning of a trimester, about what text will be read during that trimester. And then if a family or parent concern does come forward to the teacher works with the student and the family. We have an approved text matrix, which means that there are, as was mentioned by our chair of the committee, there's a text matrix, so there are several texts that are on that list, which can become either choice or required. So there are other options available for students to read that would meet the state standards.
So in the list that is sent to families, are we including a summary of what's in the book, the content? Like, how are parents just supposed to know based on the title that there might be inappropriate comment or content within that book?
May I ask a quick question before we move on to that?
Yeah.
Was the book, were parents notified of this book prior? Did that actually happen, the process that you said, did that occur?
My understanding is that it was in the syllabus for the start of the year.
Okay.
So the question that I have is I'm looking for additional information on what was actually communicated to families. Was it just the title of the book, or was there additional information accompanying the title?
So I just have to admit, I don't know the answer to that question. I believe at least at a minimum what was the title, but I'm not for sure. I can't answer that question.
Okay.
Is there somebody here that can?
Director, I'm sorry.
I got the information. It was title only. I just knew what the book was. There was no summary provided. And I only learned about the book really when I went to the learning conferences. And again, they just told the title. There was really no summary of the actual content of the book. I had basic knowledge, but that was it.
Just to clarify, so you were not notified that there would be
I'm sorry, can I
sexual
just
graphic
pop
content?
Real quick, sorry. Ms. Ronquist, do you want to come up here so we can hear you?
I'll just say that again. I was only given the title of the book. I was not given a summary. The title was in the syllabus. I went to the learning conferences the first week of school where, again, they told the title and just kind of what was going to be covered during the trimester, but they did not give content specifically about the book. I did not know that until I bought the book myself and read it.
Sorry, Tim.
Oh.
Tim, go ahead.
I guess just one point of clarification. I wanted to follow up on Director Brooks's question. So as I understand it, and Ms. Tan can correct me if I'm mistaken in this regard, the committee was really addressing the question of this book as a district-approved material for the high school curriculum. So I understand that it wasn't necessarily directed around the specific process that was used in this case. And again, Ms. Bedeau can correct me if I'm mistaken in that, but the charge of the committee in this and the question before the committee was whether or not this should be maintained as a district-approved material. The question about, I don't know that actual testimony or detail was dug into on the question about how notification was provided. And I will say, at least for that issue. Policy 641, and there's also Minnesota statute, which has been, I think was actually cited here by some members that addressed the board earlier, does require a process where if parents have a question about a particular material, instructional material that is going to be presented to their child, that they can ask to review the material in advance. And then, if they have a concern with respect to that, use an alternative text. I understand that that is what happened specifically in this case, but I just wanted to provide that for clarification.
Thank you. So the reason I asked that question is, for me, it seems like there are two very different issues that have come before the board. I know today we're voting whether or not to uphold the decision that was made by the committee to keep the book. But for me, the larger issue was that there seems to be a lack of communication to families, and I don't know if that is because of workloads or really what the case may be. But I find myself frustrated that the board is even put in this position over something that could have been communicated in advance. As a parent, I would be frustrated by not knowing this information, and the district assuming that I would know what's in every single book on the list. And so I just wanted to voice that is a frustration. I know that we're not addressing that today based on this vote, but this seems like something that could and should be cleared up pretty quickly and should not have to come before the board in the future because the parent wasn't notified of what was in a book, a required book. In terms of this vote today, I will be voting to uphold Born a Crime by Trevor Noah as required reading. For me, the larger issue was the lack of notification and the lack of collaboration with parents to be able to, one, for them to be able to be informed and to be able to help make a decision about a possible alternative for that required reading. But in terms of the book itself and everything that it represents, I certainly support what is in the book. The key themes that are included in the book that were listed by Rose Tan, who served on that committee. I think that it is an important book with very important, real, and relatable content that I think many of our scholars should read if deemed appropriate by their parents. So for me, I will be supporting this.
Okay, anyone else have any comments or?
I have some questions and comments.
Yep.
So my question, I think, is going to be for Andy Bedeau. So a number of times I have heard comments come before the board that say, well, this is a school board approved book, or this is school board approved content. And I just want to clarify, number one, for the community, the school board does not approve individual books. We have never done that. What I understand is that there is a matrix, or metrics, what is it, matrix?
Matrix.
Sorry, thank you. Where a list of books is compiled that have been approved by either yourself or Jill Kind or someone within your department, is that correct?
Correct.
And books are approved specifically for grade levels, or are they approved unanimously for the district?
For the district, so in this case, Born a Crime is being used at Osseo Senior High, but it could be used at any of our high schools here in the district.
So would we have this book in a kindergarten classroom?
I should say at a high school classroom, yes.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Is this approved? Because in the testimony that we received, the book reevaluation report, it specifically says that books are approved for grade level. So was this book approved for 9th grade?
Yes, it was.
What grade levels was it approved for?
I believe it was placed in 9th grade, but it was approved for 9 through 12.
Okay. So then my next question is, it says that within the testimony that this book was reviewed and book reviews were also reviewed. Who reviewed the publisher's teaching guide?
So in our policy, we look at policy and procedure, lists that one of the criteria that can be used as additional resources are book reviews from standard review sources, so things like the New York Times, School Library Journal, Book List, Publishers Weekly. So the committee was presented with 3 reviews. I believe one was from the New York Times Book Review, one was from Publishers Weekly, and one was from Book List.
Okay.
And those are considered some of our standard review sources.
Sure. Are you, I'm sorry, just let me clarify my question. Are you referring to when the book was added to the matrix, or are you talking about in this committee? Because I'm asking about how it was added to the matrix.
At the time, I was not involved in that process, so I believe that book reviews are looked at during that. That's one of the criteria. Also, examination by district personnel is also one of those, plus connections to educational outcomes, the needs of the different perspectives that are presented, the uniqueness of the book. So there are several different kinds of criteria that are used when they're deciding to put it on the matrix.
Okay. So it says here in Jill Kine's testimony that she did look at reviews. She did that with the coordinator of digital learning and instructional media.
So I probably presented them to her or found those for her and provided those for her.
Okay, so Common Sense Media and Compass are also resources that are used. Would you also consider publishers?
So I'm not familiar with Compass as a publisher or a standard review publisher. So I'm not, I just don't have any information about them. Common Sense Media is more for digital media. But yes, it would be considered to be a standard review.
So Common Sense Media rated this book as 18 plus, and the publisher themselves have a published teaching guide. It's available on Google, you can just look it up, which clearly identifies that this book is specifically for college level reading, or at the youngest, 11th or 12th grade in specific circumstances. Was that taken into consideration when deciding to add this curriculum to our content library?
So I would just make a point that Common Sense Media does not review adult books, but that doesn't mean that adult books are not part of our curriculum. So we just then have to look at, and in this case, reviews can have different age ranges. So the Book List one was for young adults.
Do we typically put adult books in the hands of 14-year-olds?
Well, in 9th grade on the text matrix, we have books such as Romeo and Juliet, To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, which were originally intended for an adult audience.
Okay, so is the answer to that question, yes, we regularly do that, or no, we do not?
I haven't looked at the text matrix lately, but what I would say is that adult books are not in of themselves not included on the text matrix.
Mm-hmm.
They're looked at in its entirety. How does it meet the standards? What kind of perspectives that they're bringing?
Okay, so I've asked to have access to this book list and have not been provided that. Is there a reason for that?
I'm not sure why that hasn't happened.
Well, I asked you directly.
It was, yeah, that is being built and will be provided within a reasonable amount of time. It was an extensive request.
If
So-
the matrix already exists, why can't board members have access to it?
I think we're getting off topic a bit here.
Well,
We
I
have-
think this is
Okay,
important
listen,
to the
listen,
decision-making
listen,
process
Wait,
here.
okay? So, thank you for answering these questions. Director Douglas, I know you probably have some more questions. I'm gonna let some other people go, okay? So,
Sure.
Director Simons, Mosqueda Jones, Grady, does anybody else have anything else?
Yeah, I'll go. Tanya, you ready? Oh, okay, so I just want to say I've read the book and I found it to be a very insightful piece of art and a useful piece of curriculum that meets the standards for learning appropriate and is appropriate for identity development. The book is relatable to our kids, covering issues such as apartheid, love, sexism, life, and coming of age. I want to thank you and Rose Ton and our committee and our teachers that showed up for the expertise of our curriculum development specialists, our library media specialists, and our teachers, for the time that it took to do a thorough review of this book through the committee. And again, here tonight, to all the parents who have engaged with their children's instructional materials, I really applaud your interest and your embracing involvement with your children's education. I think what we've seen tonight here is a transparent process and a demonstration of the value that we all share as a board about the importance of community input. And so I know that we believe that it's really important that everybody feels heard. And once again, thank you so much for your time.
All right, anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, so it was mentioned that there's a different version of the book. Why, can you help me understand, did the committee consider that or evaluate that? And I guess I'm curious to know maybe why the version that might be more age appropriate was not the selection, or there's nothing in the notes to any discussion about that either in the committee, so I just want some understanding of that.
So first of all, any omissions in the summary, I'll take that on, as we did the best we could when we were writing the summary. Obviously, we didn't know that it was going to be appealed, so we did the best that we could during that time. I believe, and I'll just make a note, I was not a part of the committee. I helped facilitate and set that up. So for what I recall, is that was brought up briefly, and the mention was that the young reader edition is sort of at a Lexile for 4th, 5th, 6th grade students, and may not meet the standard. That was for 9th grade.
So I do appreciate the testimony of Ms. Tan, because when I read the report, there really wasn't a lot of information about this meeting the standard, or I guess like I was expecting more academic review in this report and how it meets the standard, and so I appreciate that there was more information in that 5-minute testimony, so that would have been helpful to have seen in the report, because I'm just not clear at what took place in the meeting based on the report versus what was additional comments tonight. That's what I'm just trying to understand. So I guess like in your testimony, did you add comments for our benefit, or just to expand on it, that were beyond what was in the committee, or did you discuss, I'm guessing you discussed that in depth in the committee and it just wasn't in the report?
So the comments that I prepared tonight reflect
about meeting
the
the standards
discussion
explicitly
of the of the committee. There wasn't anything that was brought in after the fact.
Okay, so it just wasn't as thorough in terms of how it meets the state standards?
Exactly. What you were provided was a summary of the meeting. I believe our meeting lasted about an hour and a half. I mean, we had a very thorough discussion and heard a lot of testimony and remarks and asked a lot of great questions.
Okay. Another question would be, is there an opportunity for this book to be placed at a different grade level? Does the state standards and the curriculum, would there be space at a higher level, at like a 10th or 11th or 12th grade level versus a 9th and 10th grade level?
So I don't want to speak for Jill Kind, Dr. Jill Kind, but obviously this could be relooked at from her team, the ELA team, and it could be looked at to meet another standard, could be in world history, could be in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is that opening, but for right now, like, the question I struggled on is, what was the teacher? How did the teacher present that information? And really, the committee was looking at the text itself, not necessarily how the teacher was using that, how they were communicating with that. We were really looking at the merits of the book itself during that committee meeting.
So I have a question for Mr. Palmatier. If this were to be voted to overturn, or would that remove it from the entire 9th through 12th curriculum, or only for the 9th grade, so that it could be made available for a higher level?
Yeah, I can't speak all to the specifics in terms of the approval process. I do understand that this book was approved 9th through 12th grade. I don't believe the appeal would really dig into that question about what age appropriate or what grade appropriate level the text should be at. And so what I will say is I don't think that was the issue before the committee. And I think that the issue before the committee should be what is decided here before the board tonight.
Yes, I guess I want to clarify, if we were to overturn it, does that mean it gets removed from 9 through 12 or only for 9th? Because you used the general term English curriculum, and then I heard separately 9th grade curriculum. So I just want to make sure I have full clarity as to, are we talking about removing it from high school altogether or just from 9th grade?
I believe the question would be whether or not it should be continued on the list for 9th through 12th grade as a text, approved text.
Yep,
But
so when
if
the
that-
text is approved, they try to place it where they think best it's going to meet the standards, but it could be moved, depending on if there's new ELA standards. For example, they're in draft, we might re-examine and see where they are, but for right now, the question that the committee was looking at was, is this an approved text for 9 through 12?
Okay. That's a really key factual point in the testimony, is whether the reviews say that this is appropriate for the specific age group that the parents are concerned with and that the appeal was really based on. So that's an important fact to consider. I think that's my questions.
I have a follow-up question to that. Do we have texts that are approved only for certain grade levels? I'm wondering because I know in high school, there are courses where there might be several different ages in a class. So is that a common experience or common thing that we do?
I think that, again, I'll go back to the process is we would approve a text for 9 through 12 and then try to align it with the course.
Right, so that's
and
what
the
I'm
standards.
asking.
Yep.
Typically, we just do 9 through 12 because it's high school and
Yes.
I see this as, I think the question before us is whether or not to keep this text on the 9 through 12 English curriculum approved list. The question about informing families or having family input or how, as someone who, was always concerned about what my children were reading, I understand that. And as a teacher, I'm not always sure what is going to offend whom. So I'm wondering if we have a matrix of or if we can maybe take this as a separate issue to look at in a different way of how can we make sure that we're involving community in discussion about how we can look at, because I understand Director Brooks's, he would have liked a little synopsis of this. But if someone's gonna read a text and it's gonna have the F word in it, and not the one that rhymes with truck, but the one that's derogatory towards gay people, I would have a huge issue with that. Do you know what I'm saying? And if someone said, well, it's in this context, I wouldn't have such an issue. You know what I'm saying? So that's the concern I'm having about this whole discussion is, one, I think it's derailed from the actual question, which is, should we keep this as a 9 through 12 text? And there's this whole other discussion that we need to have about, do we need to have ratings like they do on TV shows? This includes trigger warnings for this, this, and this, and this, or that's what I'm wondering, and where do we go from there? And that's just, I'm not gonna answer any questions, I'm not asking anyone to answer it. Those questions, I just need to put that out into the air as kind of a general thing. So I will be I will vote to uphold the decision because I do think it's an important text for those age levels, and I can understand when people have, issues with certain texts. And it makes our as parents, I think, our jobs get harder and harder to help our scholars navigate what is helpful and unhelpful and how we can have these discussions. So I just wanted to also put that out there. I'm done.
Okay, just let me say something before we keep going. I just want to remind everybody, the question on the table is to affirm the November 3rd, 2021 reevaluation committee determination.
Yep.
I think that this is a discussion, there seems like there is a lot of interest from the board on some of the nuances and I mean, what I fear is that we're going down this road and what may not, you know, you may not approve in your household, I may approve in my household, but you may not approve, and I just think we're in this slippery slope that we do have a committee through our policy, 652, that really does sets the process for this, and so I think we need to adhere to that. Now, if there needs to be further discussion, I'm looking at you, Corey or Tim, then I think we need to pursue that, but I think too, Andy, and you're here, I mean, I want to, I don't want this to be an interrogation of you, because I think what the question is about the November 3rd reevaluation committee determination, that's what we're voting on. I think anything beyond that, that's really out of that scope we need to move forward in a different way, whether it goes back to policy committee, whether we talk about that in a work session. So I'm going to say that, and I will do one more round, and then we need to, I'll ask for a roll call vote on this. All right, anybody else?
I have one question, and then I have some comments.
Okay.
My question is actually for Celeste, and you had said that your student had to leave the classroom. Can you please elaborate on why your student was not allowed to be in class?
Yes, so we worked with the teacher after we explained what our issues were with the text and the book itself and the appropriateness of our son reading it. And we really were left with, I think, two choices. Either remove him from the class itself and put him in a different class. The only problem was every other 9th grade class except for one at Osseo was reading the same book. So that was difficult for us to make that choice. And the one class, there would have been a lot of complicating factors for the rest of his class schedule to move him just to that one class that wasn't reading a book. So the other option was he could choose a book to read on his own, but because they read the book out loud in class, we wouldn't want him sitting in there and reading the book, because that was defeating what we felt our convictions were over the book and the text itself. So he needed to be removed from class for those first 20 minutes every day that they were reading the book out loud, and go to an adjoining, it was a classroom right next door that wasn't being used, and he sat there alone for 20 minutes and read his own book that we chose with him, that still met the standards and actually fit the theme of identity, but didn't have the same content. So that was what he did every day for all of trimester, for the rest of trimester 1.
Thank you. Okay, so I have some concerns about the transparency of this committee report. And the reason I am concerned about the transparency of the committee report is, as Director Simons has already said, we received quite a bit more information tonight from Ms. Tunn, and I do appreciate that, so thank you for expounding on that information. That's valuable information to our decision-making process. But also, I'm concerned when I look at Mr. Jorgensen's testimony in this report, which says that there has not been an issue with this book before, when in fact I know that to be untrue. This book has come up within Osseo Senior High multiple times before. I know that there are other parents in this room who have had concerns with this book. I know it's been brought up in past years. So this isn't new. And I really feel like as we evaluate this reevaluation summary, and we consider the core values of our district, and the conversation, we just approved our strategic priorities, and we really talked about transparency. And this isn't transparent to us as board members. We haven't even been given the full picture to evaluate this and make an informed decision without that additional context and information. And quite frankly, it feels like a lie. And maybe Mr. Jorgensen specifically did not have an issue with any other families. But the fact remains that teachers within Osseo Senior High did have issues with families coming to them about this book, students who did not complete their reading of this book, students who were removed from the classes or given an alternate book because it is a required reading. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm also concerned about the limited materials that the board has been provided. I had to ask for a copy of the book to look at it myself from the district because we weren't given that to look at and find out what the content really was. I am concerned that the report says that Ms. Rundquist believes that the book is for more mature students and not appropriate for ninth grade students, which is 14 and 15-year-olds. However, it's a fact that the publishers themselves have deemed this book not appropriate for 14 and 15-year-olds. It's not just her belief alone. There are other sources. The Teacher's Guide specifically addresses what this book should be used for. Common Sense Media, which we do regularly use in this district, designated this as an 18-plus book. So it's not been reviewed by them. We weren't provided that information. And I'm also concerned about the points that Director Simons brought up about whether or not we can designate this book as appropriate for specific grade levels, because I do think after reading the book there is some valuable information in the book. There's a lot of themes that I think are appropriate for older students but not for those younger students. So how do we differentiate between what's appropriate? And also, to Director Brooks's points, providing transparency up front has to be essential. That's what we've committed to doing that. And I know that's a separate conversation, so I won't get into that, but I do think that we need to have another conversation about how we address this going forward. And I am struggling because I do not believe that we should affirm this book for 9 through 12. I believe it should be affirmed for 11 and 12. And I don't support censorship or removing of books from our schools. I don't support that, but I do think that we need to be cognizant of what's appropriate for students at different age levels. When I think about my own household, I know that I have 2 students who this book will never be appropriate for. They will never be able to comprehend the themes in this book based on their developmental and learning disabilities. It will be extremely difficult for them to understand what this means and why these things occur. And we have to be cognizant of that when we have so many students in our district who do have learning disabilities and don't have the capability to understand them. And I also think that a warning should be appropriate, especially for our students who are coming from countries where they are now here as refugees. I think that this would be traumatic for them to read that without knowing ahead of time what they're being exposed to. So I'm going to end with that, but I really do think that we need a third option here, not just yes or no.
Okay, does anybody have anything else they want to say?
So, no, I would just echo the comments. It's unfortunate that this is kind of a yes or a no versus a more nuanced decision. And I also completely agree with other board members' comments that this really, like, we shouldn't have been put in this situation to begin with. It could have been avoided. And I think this really cracks open a lot of eye-opening concerns for me personally in terms of what's in our curriculum, how parents are informed, the fact that, yes, the law says that we don't have to proactively tell them. It just is when they discover it that they can come and look at it. So I think we really need to address this in policy and procedures and ensure that we have trust with our families and that when we have mature content that may not be age appropriate, especially when it's designated so by publishers, that we have a process to ensure there's informed consent by parents for any mature content in any curriculum. Thank you.
All right, anybody else have anything else?
I have one more thing to say.
Chair Dawson-Walton?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I know you want to get to the vote here, but I do want to address 2 things. I did not sit in a committee meeting, so I wasn't privy to all the discussion. I do know that it's largely an ad hoc committee established by people who volunteer to be in that position, appointed in a way that's trying to be independent. It is probably an imperfect process, to be sure. It might always be that way when you're dealing with these types of questions. But I do want to thank those members of the committee that had to sit down and have those discussions. I think they tried to be as earnest as they possibly could. The summary perhaps not as much as some of the board members want here today, but I think that was not for want of effort. And I would say, at least in terms of under the notion of continuous improvement, lesson learned perhaps in that respect, we don't have these types of challenges that often. This is the first one in my time here, so it's been over 5 years. So I do want to at least, again, I didn't sit in the process. I actually want to thank the challenger here. I think that from everything that I've heard here, the approach has been respectful and thoughtful, and I think However this vote plays out, whatever the process might be, we can learn from it. But I do think the committee's efforts were appropriate, were noble, and were trying to stay in keeping with what the procedures and policy require.
Thank you. Director Mosqueda Jones.
I pretty much wanted to say what you just said, so thank
Perfect.
you. And I do want to add that I want to thank the teachers that work really hard in trying to figure out what's going to help our students become critical thinkers. And I know that doesn't always end up agreeing with every parent. And in this year especially, with the difficulty of teaching, I do want to recognize that and the committee and how much work they did.
All right,
Chair
thank you.
Dawson, can I just add my 2 cents?
Mhm.
I was going to say a lot of things Mr. Palmetier did. I think it can be a both and, honestly. This
Yep.
came forward based on the content, and we are wrestling with process. Process can be improved. We're always trying to do a better job with that. And I think it can be a both and, where if we continue to work on time and place for this particular book, and then continue to, I've noted the concerns of the board here. You've been very clear about your concerns about process and how we go about this, and these are sensitive, touchy subjects, right? And I would also say our staff do an amazing job. They have the good intentions at heart, and we need to work through how do we communicate better, how do we engage better, knowing that, I think you said it well, if you're gonna have to, as a board, agree on every book that's in our district, you won't have many books to choose from. That's the beauty of it, right?
Yep.
But can we have a good process where people can engage in it and have choices? So those are the things. If you separate content from process, we can improve on those things. We've noted those concerns. We will continue to work on that, separate from the actual content that the concerns originated from in the actual book. And I want to thank, I agree with Mr. Palmetier, our complainant that came forward, and even at the committee was very respectful, very willing to engage in that process, and it's hard. So again, I come back to it's kind of a both and. I think we can accomplish both. The learning through this process is how I'll offer that to you anyway.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think we also have to be careful that not everybody's going to feel that way about this particular book. There's probably a whole bunch of other people in our district that think it's like, yes, this is such a great educational materials, and so Director Douglas, you talk about your home. I talk about my home. My daughter is African American, sitting in a class reading To Kill a Mockingbird, using the N-word. I mean, it's an opportunity for me to sit with her and the teacher and really talk about that and how to have that conversation in a room. So I think that you could look at kind of all sides of it. So I just want to be careful we're not leaving here thinking that this is a horrible book or anything like that, because I do not want that. I think Ms. Rundquist, thank you for bringing this up. I think you really cracked a nut here, and I think that we're ready to look at that process, because that's where we really, have the influence. And I want to say that I do believe that the committee, I think, has reasonable grounds for their decision, and really put, the conversation today put a lot into context, at least for me, on the dialogue. And I think in our district we always grapple. It's a good thing. It's also challenging that we do have so many diverse perspectives. So with that, I will ask Sherry if you'll do a roll call vote, please.
The motion to affirm the November 3rd, 2021 reevaluation committee determination. Director Douglas?
No.
Director Simons?
Nay.
Chair Dawson-Walton?
Aye.
Director Mosqueda Jones?
Aye.
Director Brooks?
Aye.
Director Grady?
Aye.
Vote 5-1, the motion passes.
4-2.
4-2. I'm sorry.
It's okay, Sherry.
I said.
I should have said no, I said nay.
Sorry, I thought you said aye.
Yeah, Tanya's. All right. The last action item is approval of gifts of the district totaling $71,293.55. Is there a motion to approve gifts to the district in the amount of $71,293.55?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Director Mosqueda Jones, seconded by Director Grady. Any discussion? Thank you.
Yeah, big thank you to the
Thank you.
donations
Thank you.
this month.
Yeah, huge.
All right. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. And our last agenda item is adjournment. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Director Douglas, second by Director Brooks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, motion passes 6-0. The meeting is adjourned at 9:40 p.m. My computer died.